Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, you have chosen to step into a story, one that will carry you gently into rest. This is more than a tale of spells and castles, more than names on a page. It is an exploration of the wizarding world itself, its laws, its schools, its traditions, and the everyday wonders that keep it alive. In this story, we will wander far and wide. We will learn of the Statute of Secrecy, the law that hides magic from muggles and shapes every decision in the wizarding world. We will explore Hogwarts, where children are trained not only in spell work, but also in responsibility, ethics, and tradition. We will travel through magical infrastructure, from the Floo network and Portkeys to the enchanted train that carries students to school each year. We will step into St. Mungo's Hospital, where healers mend injuries that no muggle doctor could imagine, yet still face limits no spell can overcome. We will listen to the voices of magical media, explore the play of sports and festivals, and pause at portraits and stories that carry the voices of the past into the present. These are not separate topics, but pieces of one fabric. Together, they reveal how the wizarding world endures. Through war and peace, through joy and hardship, through triumph and loss. Magic alone has never been enough. It is law, tradition, ethics, and culture that hold society together. Each lesson you hear tonight connects to the next, weaving into a story not only of enchantments, but of community, memory, and resilience. If you are here to sleep, let these words wash over you like the pages of an old book turning quietly in the dark. If you are here to learn, allow yourself to hold on to the details until your mind drifts into rest. Either way, this story is for you. My dream is to make the best sleep stories on YouTube. I gently invite you to support this journey. Please subscribe to the channel so that each time a new story opens its doors, you will be among the first to enter. A quiet like helps more people discover these tales, while a visit to the channel itself will reveal more stories waiting for you, each one crafted to soothe, to fascinate, and to guide you into peace. Where are you listening from tonight? Perhaps you are resting at home, your room dimly lit and ready for sleep. Perhaps you are listening from a faraway country, on the other side of the ocean, where the night is already deep. Or perhaps the sun has not yet set where you are, and you are simply seeking a pocket of calm. Wherever you are, I invite you to settle in, to share in the comments where you are listening from, and to know that this story links you to a community of people across the world who are also slowing down, breathing, and listening. Now, let us begin. Close your eyes if you wish, and picture the castle in the distance. Its towers rise into the night sky, windows glowing like lanterns. The Hogwarts Express has carried us here, and the doors are opening before us. Together, we step inside, into a world where every spell, every tradition, and every story connects, creating the rhythm of magical life. The Statute of Secrecy is one of those things in Harry Potter that when you're first introduced to it, it makes sense. It's a law that prevents witches and wizards from using magic in front of muggles or non-magical people. The Ministry of Magic keeps the existence of magic a secret from the Muggle world to prevent persecution and panic. And it seems like a good idea at the time. But there are a few flaws with this plan, which become more apparent as the series progresses. Like, how do they keep secrets from Muggles if they have to interact with them at all? Or why didn't they just tell Muggles about magic in the first place? Or how come no one thought to hide the giant spiders in the Forbidden Forest from the nearby Muggle town? But that's for another video. Today, we're just going to try and answer the question, what exactly is the Statute of Secrecy? How does it work? And why is it even a thing? First off, you might be wondering, where did this whole secrecy thing come from? Well, the Statute of Secrecy was created in 1689 during the early days of the International Confederation of Wizards, and fully enacted in 1692. This was roughly around the time that witches and wizards were facing increased persecution during the European witch hunts. With this danger came the problem of how to deal with non-magical people. As we know, magic can be dangerous in the wrong hands. A muggle finding out about magic and then trying to use it for their own purposes could be pretty disastrous. On top of that, if muggles found out that magic was real, they would probably try to control and regulate it. And if witches and wizards had to register themselves and their magical abilities to the government, well, that's just not very fun. No one wants to be regulated. That's why people buy houses in the middle of nowhere, so they can practice their magic without being bothered. Not that I know anything about that. In order to avoid these problems, the Statute of Secrecy was created, establishing that witches and wizards would keep their abilities secret from the non-magical world. The statute made it illegal for witches and wizards to perform magic in the presence of muggles, and it forbade the ministry from giving out information regarding magical beings to anyone who wasn't a witch or wizard. You see, witches and wizards aren't supposed to tell muggles that magic is real, but muggles can still find out. For example, if someone saw Hagrid wrestling a dragon, they might not believe it at first, but after seeing some fire and smoke and hearing some screams, they might start to think, maybe there really are dragons in this forest. If enough people witnessed something fantastical, word would eventually get out that something strange was going on. And then the ministry would have to cover it up with a memory charm. Obliviation, the spell Obliviate, is what the Ministry of Magic actually uses to erase memories of magical events. Obliviators are tasked with making sure muggles don't remember what they saw. This system of secrecy and memory modification has kept magic hidden from the non-magical world for centuries. Now that we know where the secrecy comes from, let's talk about how it works. How exactly is the statute enforced? And how come everyone knows about it? Well, it's not like there's a big sign outside of Hogwarts that says, "Hey, don't use magic here or you'll get expelled." It's more of a fundamental rule taught from a young age. All witches and wizards know that they're not supposed to reveal magic to muggles, and it is written into wizarding law. Breaking it can bring real consequences, from fines to expulsion from Hogwarts, in the case of underage wizards, to even imprisonment in Azkaban for serious breaches. When you become a witch or wizard, you just kind of learn that you're not supposed to reveal magic to muggles. This is taught to young witches and wizards at a very early age, even before they start attending Hogwarts. By the time they're 11 years old, they know that they have to keep their powers a secret. But it's not just kids that are taught this. Any witch or wizard who interacts with the Muggle world has to keep secrecy in mind. That means that witches and wizards who live in the Muggle world and work in Muggle jobs have to be extra careful. They can't let slip that they're magical, even if it might be helpful. For example, imagine if a witch or wizard was working as a police officer. They might want to use their magical abilities to help solve crimes, but they can't. Doing that would break the Statute of Secrecy. Because of this, witches and wizards who live in the Muggle world often have to be more clever than their Muggle counterparts. They can't just use magic to make everything easier. They have to find creative ways to live and work while staying hidden. This can be difficult, but it's also a good thing. It forces witches and wizards to be more resourceful. It makes them think outside the box and come up with new ways to use their powers. So while the Statute of Secrecy may seem like a burden, it can also be a good thing. It challenges witches and wizards to be more creative with their magic. It forces them to be more clever and resourceful. Finally, let's talk about why this whole secrecy thing is a good idea. As we mentioned earlier, magic can be dangerous in the wrong hands. If Muggles got their hands on it, they might try to weaponize it or use it for their own gain. On top of that, if Muggles knew that magic was real, they might become obsessed with it. They might start to think that magic is the only way to solve their problems, or that it's the answer to all of life's questions. This could lead to a lot of chaos and panic. People running around trying to use magic to fix everything. And none of it would actually work, because magic doesn't always work like that. By keeping magic a secret, witches and wizards are able to protect both themselves and the Muggle world. They're able to keep magic safe from those who would use it for evil, and they're able to keep the Muggles safe from the dangers of magic. It's a win-win situation. So there you have it. That's what the Statute of Secrecy is all about. It's a law that keeps magic hidden from the Muggle world. It's enforced by the Ministry of Magic, and it's upheld by all witches and wizards. It's not always easy, but it's important to keep magic safe. When you think about governance in the wizarding world, the Ministry of Magic is at the center of it all. It's the organization that sets policy, enforces laws, and basically keeps magical society running. If the Statute of Secrecy is about keeping wizards hidden from Muggles, then the Ministry is about keeping wizards in line with each other. So, what exactly is governance and law in the wizarding world? Well, the Ministry of Magic is made up of different departments that each handle their own piece of the puzzle. For example, you've got the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, which is where Aurors work. Think of them like highly trained magical detectives and soldiers, dealing with dark wizards and major threats. Then you have the Wizengamot, the wizard in court. This is where trials are held, verdicts are given, and punishments are decided. It doesn't stop there, though. There are departments for regulating magical creatures, issuing permits for things like wands or portkeys, and even handling magical accidents when someone accidentally sets their teapot on fire with a misfired spell. The ministry is huge, and each part of it is designed to make sure wizards can live safely while following the law. Now, why does this matter? Well, because, just like in the Muggle world, if you don't follow procedure, things can go very wrong. Let's take underage magic as an example. Wizards under 17 aren't supposed to perform magic outside of school, except in emergencies. If you're caught, you could face hearings, penalties, or even expulsion from Hogwarts. That's exactly what almost happened to Harry in Order of the Phoenix. When he used a Patronus to defend himself from Dementors. Then there are the unforgivable curses. The Killing Curse, the Cruciatus Curse, and the Imperious Curse. These are so dangerous that using any one of them on another human being earns you a one-way ticket to Azkaban. No excuses. That's how seriously wizarding law treats the misuse of magic. But governance isn't only about punishment. It's also about protection. For example, you need ministry approval for magical objects like time turners, or for creating portkeys, which can transport groups of people instantly. There are permits, hearings, and investigations, all designed to prevent chaos. Knowing how the system works can keep you safe and, just as importantly, employable. Because, here's the thing. Wizards who understand the ministry's rules can navigate society much more easily. If you're applying for a job at Gringotts, the Daily Prophet, or even as an Auror, employers want to know you understand magical law. They don't want someone who's going to break the rules and cause trouble. Following procedure shows responsibility, and responsibility gets you hired. So, while governance and law in the wizarding world might sound boring, it's actually the backbone of magical life. The Ministry of Magic sets the rules, Auras enforce them, and the Wisengamot makes sure justice is carried out. Knowing all of this helps you avoid dangerous mistakes, stay on the right side of the law, and build a career in the wizarding world. When it comes to magic in the wizarding world, one of the first things you learn is that it's innate. Witches and wizards are born with the ability to perform magic. It's part of who they are. You can't learn magic the way you'd learn a language or a sport if you weren't born with the gift. That's why some people are magical and others are mug. But here's the thing. While magic lives inside the witch or wizard, most of them can't reliably control it on their own. That's where wands come in. A wand acts as a channel, a focus, for magical energy. Instead of spells bursting out randomly, a wand directs that energy with precision. It's the difference between trying to drink water from a fire hose versus sipping from a glass. Same power, more control, and wands aren't just tools, they're deeply personal. The wand chooses the wizard. That's not just a catchphrase Mr. Ollivander uses to make sales. It's literal. The core and wood of a wand have magical properties, and they respond to certain people better than others. That's why Harry's wand shares a phoenix feather core with Voldemort's, a connection that mattered far more than anyone realized. Wand allegiance is another key factor. A wand can shift loyalty if it's won in a duel or taken through mastery, usually by disarming its owner. This is exactly how Draco Malfoy unknowingly became the master of the Elder Wand after disarming Dumbledore, and later how Harry became its true master by defeating Draco. It's not always about killing, it's about control, power, and magical recognition. Of course, wands aren't the only way to perform magic. Some beings, like house elves, goblins, and giants, are capable of wandless magic. House elves in particular can perform incredibly powerful spells without wands, things that would challenge even skilled witches and wizards. However, in wizarding society, wand use is tightly regulated by the Ministry, and humans are expected to use them almost exclusively. So, why does this matter? Because equipment, craftsmanship, and compatibility directly affect your magical capability. A poorly matched wand can make spells weaker or unstable, while the right wand can amplify your potential. Ollivander spends his life studying wand lore for a reason. The relationship between wizard and wand can mean the difference between success and failure, safety and danger, even life and death. In the end, magic may be innate, but wands are the keys that unlock it. They focus, channel, and enhance what witches and wizards are capable of, shaping not just their spells, but often their destinies. In the end, magic may be innate, but wands are the keys that unlock it. They focus, channel, and enhance what witches and wizards are capable of, shaping not just their spells, but often their destinies. This brings us to wand lore, a field of study that is as mysterious as it is important. Wands are made of two essential components, the wood and the core. The wood determines much of the wand's personality, its flexibility, and the way it responds to its owner. Different woods carry different traits. For example, holly is rare and considered protective, while yew is associated with both death and rebirth, which is why Voldemort carried a yew wand. Elder is the rarest of all, producing the Elder Wand, which is unmatched in power. The core is equally vital. Only 3 are commonly used in British wand making: unicorn hair, dragon heartstring, and phoenix feather. Unicorn hair is the most consistent, producing wands that are loyal and stable, though sometimes less powerful in sudden bursts of magic. Dragon heartstring produces powerful wands with strong magical flow, but they can be more temperamental. Phoenix feather cores are the rarest, producing wands with great range and versatility, but they may take longer to fully master. Ollivander considered phoenix feather wands the hardest to predict, but also the most extraordinary. The combination of wood and core creates a wand that is unique. Two wands may look similar, but no two are ever identical. Even when they share a core or a type of wood, their individual traits vary based on length, flexibility, and the magical bond they form with the wizard. That is why it is so difficult, and often dangerous, to try and forcefully use a wand that does not belong to you. It is also important to understand that wand compatibility changes over time. A young witch or wizard might struggle with a wand at first, but as they grow in magical skill and personal character, the wand can adapt. In some cases, however, a wizard may find that their wand no longer serves them well, and they seek out a replacement. This is rare, because wands are not disposable tools. They are lifelong companions that share in the magical journey. Wand lore also teaches that the relationship between wizard and wand is not entirely one-sided. Wands have semi-sentient qualities. They can learn, they can resist, and they can transfer loyalty. The Elder Wand is the clearest example of this principle. It shifted from Dumbledore to Draco, and finally to Harry, recognizing not just physical possession, but mastery in combat. Some witches and wizards experiment with wandless magic, but this is advanced and difficult for most humans. Beings like house elves are naturally capable of it, often producing stronger results without a wand than a wizard could with one. This raises questions about whether wands enhance or restrict human magical potential. Yet, in wizarding society, the use of wands has become so standard that mastery without one is considered unusual. What all of this shows is that while magic comes from within, the wand is what gives it shape, direction, and refinement. Understanding your wand is not just about knowing what it is made of, but about knowing yourself. A wand reflects the wizard it chooses, and that relationship is one of the most important bonds a magical person will ever have. When people first learn about magic, it is tempting to think that it can do anything. After all, spells can heal wounds, transfigure objects, or even summon items from across a room. Yet the truth is that magic has limits, and understanding those limits is just as important as mastering the spells themselves. One of the clearest examples comes from Gamp's law of elemental transfiguration. This law states that certain things cannot be conjured out of nothing. Food is the most commonly cited example. You can summon food, multiply food, or transform one type of food into another, but you cannot create it entirely from thin air. This is why Hogwarts needs real ingredients for its feasts, and why Molly Weasley still has to cook, even in a magical household. Other limitations appear in the realm of time. The Ministry of Magic has long restricted the use of time turners because of the dangers of time travel. Even a short journey backward can create paradoxes or irreversible consequences. During Harry's third year, Hermione's use of a time turner was closely supervised, and after the events at the Department of Mysteries, most of these devices were destroyed. This shows how carefully controlled time manipulation must be. Perhaps the greatest limitation of all is death. No spell can truly bring someone back once they have died. Dark wizards like Voldemort sought ways to evade or twist this rule, splitting his soul into Horcruxes, or creating an artificial half-life through possession and dark magic. The Resurrection Stone can call back shades of the dead, but they are not fully alive. This boundary between life and death remains absolute. Even every day, magic carries costs and risks. Overusing powerful spells can drain a wizard's energy. Misapplied charms can have side effects, like backfiring or producing unstable results. Legal boundaries also matter. The unforgivable curses, for instance, may be effective, but their use is outlawed, and the punishment is severe. Why does this matter? Because magic is not a perfect solution to every problem. Wizards and witches must learn to work within its constraints. They must plan with an understanding of what magic cannot achieve, and they must respect both the natural limits and the legal restrictions. Knowing these boundaries keeps people safe, prevents reckless mistakes, and reminds us that even in a world filled with spells, not everything can be solved with a wand. A clear example of these limits appears in the case of the Philosopher's Stone. Nicholas Flamel created the stone, which could produce the elixir of life and extend human existence. But even this powerful magical object had boundaries. When Flamel and his wife chose to destroy the stone after Voldemort attempted to steal it, they accepted that their extended lives would end. This shows that even when magic can delay death, it cannot truly prevent it forever. The stone could extend life, but it could not erase mortality itself, reinforcing the idea that magic has ultimate limits no wizard can escape. When it comes to spellcasting, the fundamentals matter more than anything else. Magic may be innate, and wands may channel it, but without skill and discipline, a spell will never behave the way it should. Every successful piece of spellwork comes down to a few essential elements: intent, incantation, wand movement, and control. Intent is the foundation. A wizard must know exactly what they want the spell to do, and they must focus their will on that outcome. Incantations add structure, guiding the magic through specific words, most of which are rooted in Latin or other ancient languages. Wand movement shapes the spell, whether it is a swish and flick for levitation or a sharp jab for a stunning spell. Finally, control ties everything together, keeping the spell stable so it does not backfire. The importance of precision cannot be overstated. A mispronounced word or a sloppy gesture can turn a harmless charm into something unpredictable. In Harry's first year, Seamus Finnegan's repeated explosions in charms class showed exactly what happens when focus and focus are lacking. Professor Flitwick reminded students again and again that swish and flick was not optional, it was essential. Mastery also comes only with practice. Even simple spells require repetition until the movements and words become second nature. Hermione's success with charms and transfiguration was not a matter of raw talent alone. It came from constant practice and detailed notes, while others, like Ron, sometimes struggled because they relied too much on instinct and not enough on discipline. Why does this matter? Because competence always outweighs bravado. A wizard who practices carefully, documents their techniques, and respects the fundamentals will be more effective and far safer than one who rushes or shows off. Safe spellcasting is not just about personal success, it is about protecting those around you. Every spell carries risk, and mastery comes only through steady practice and respect for the art. At Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, education is carefully structured to prepare young witches and wizards for their future roles in the magical world. The early years are spent building a strong foundation across all the core subjects: transfiguration, charms, potions, herbology, astronomy, history of magic, and defense against the dark arts. Students also begin to explore electives such as care of magical creatures, divination, or arithmancy as they progress, gradually shaping their personal academic path. The first significant checkpoint arrives in the 5th year, when students sit for their ordinary wizarding levels, or OWLs. These examinations are designed to assess not just knowledge, but also the ability to apply magic under pressure. The results of the OWLs determine which courses a student may continue in during their final 2 years at Hogwarts. A strong performance opens the door to advanced study, while lower marks can close off certain career paths entirely. The final stage of academic training comes in the 6th and 7th years, where students enter the NEWT level, short for nastily exhausting, wizarding tests. These are some of the most demanding academic experiences in the magical world. The results of the NEWTs hold enormous weight, as they directly influence career prospects. A witch or wizard hoping to become an Auror, for example, must earn exceptionally high marks in defense against the dark arts. Those who wish to serve as healers need strong results in potions and herbology, while those with ambitions in research, magical crafts, or the ministry may need excellence across a range of disciplines. This system matters because a student's choices and dedication during school shape their opportunities after graduation. Selecting the right courses, committing time to practical work in laboratories and classrooms, and earning the trust and recommendation of professors are just as important as the final exam scores. Hogwarts, therefore, is not simply a place of magical instruction, but a training ground where effort, discipline, and direction determine a young witch or wizard's future path. The wizarding world is not solely composed of witches and wizards. It is home to a wide array of creatures and beings, each with their own cultures, histories, and traditions. Among them are goblins, known for their craftsmanship and banking expertise. Centaurs, who value independence and possess deep knowledge of the stars. Merpeople, whose societies thrive beneath the water. House elves, bound by long histories of servitude. And werewolves, who live with unique challenges shaped by prejudice and transformation. Understanding these groups requires more than awareness of their existence. Each has its own customs, languages, and perspectives that must be respected. Over time, debates about rights and classifications have been at the center of wizarding politics. Some beings, like goblins and centaurs, resist ministry definitions altogether, demanding autonomy and recognition on their own terms. Others, such as house elves, raise difficult questions about labor, freedom, and tradition. The importance of this diversity is not academic alone. Collaboration and coexistence depend on careful diplomacy. Treaties, laws, and agreements only succeed when language is respectful and intentions are clear. Miscommunication or disregard for cultural norms often leads to conflict, while patient dialogue can foster alliances that benefit all. Whether in matters of governance, trade, or defense, the way witches and wizards engage with other beings is a measure of both wisdom and responsibility. In this way, creatures and beings are not simply background figures in the magical world, but essential partners whose voices shape its future. The art of diplomacy lies in balancing respect with negotiation, ensuring that the wizarding community recognizes the value of those who share its world. This balance has often been tested throughout history. Goblins, for example, have long held grievances over wand ownership and the treatment of goblin-forged treasures. Their mastery of metalwork and banking makes them indispensable. Yet mistrust between goblins and wizards persists, fueled by centuries of broken agreements and cultural misunderstanding. Successful diplomacy in this case requires not only fair trade, but also an acknowledgement of goblin traditions and a willingness to listen to their demands for autonomy. Centaurs present another challenge. Proud and fiercely independent, they reject interference from the Ministry of Magic and refuse to be classified alongside what the Ministry labels as beasts. Their communities in the Forbidden Forest and beyond demonstrate a deep connection to the natural world and the stars. Diplomatic engagement with centaurs is difficult because they see wizarding politics as short-sighted and self-serving. Respecting their sovereignty and approaching them as equals rather than subordinates is essential to any meaningful relationship. Mer people, inhabiting lakes and seas across the globe, bring a different perspective. While often overlooked by land dwellers, their underwater societies are complex, with hierarchies, traditions, and their own language. The Triwizard Tournament of 1994 provided rare visibility into their culture. When Hogwarts students witnessed the merfolk of the Black Lake during the second task, wizards who seek their cooperation must make an effort to learn their speech and customs, as mistranslations or dismissive attitudes can easily sour relations. House elves highlight a more uncomfortable dimension of wizarding society. Long bound by magical servitude, they are capable of extraordinary magic, yet their rights and freedoms remain limited. While some elves, such as Dobby, have pursued independence, many others resist liberation, having been raised within traditions of service. This raises complex questions about choice, cultural identity, and morality. The effort to address elf welfare, championed most notably by Hermione Granger through her SPEW organization, demonstrates how diplomacy must also confront ingrained prejudice and structural inequality. Werewolves face another form of struggle, defined by fear and stigma rather than by cultural separation. Individuals such as Remus Lupin showed that a werewolf could be a gifted teacher and a loyal ally. Yet social exclusion and restrictive laws make it nearly impossible for many werewolves to find work or community. The 1990s saw figures like Fenrir Greyback exploit this marginalization, deepening hostilities between werewolves and wizarding society. Diplomacy here is not only political but also social. It requires rethinking laws, offering compassion, and recognizing the humanity of those living with a dangerous condition. Taken together, these examples show that creatures and beings are not passive inhabitants of the wizarding world, but active participants whose relationships with wizards shape history, moments of progress such as the International Statute of Secrecy, which required cooperation across magical species to conceal the magical world, demonstrate the power of collective effort. Failures, on the other hand, reveal the cost of arrogance and neglect. Diplomacy in the wizarding world is therefore both an art and a necessity. It demands patience, cultural understanding, and a willingness to learn from the past. Wizards and witches who aspire to leadership, governance, or even everyday interaction with other beings must remember that respect is the foundation of peace, and that no magical society can truly thrive if it refuses to honor the dignity of all who dwell within it. In the study of magic, few topics are as sensitive or as consequential as ethics and consent. The wizarding world has long grappled with the implications of spells, potions, and abilities that directly touch the mind, emotions, or free will of others. Practices such as legilomancy, memory modification, and the use of love potions illustrate the profound risks when power over another person's thoughts or choices is exercised without consent. Legilomancy, the art of reading or intruding upon another's mind, is perhaps the clearest example. Skilled legilimens, like Lord Voldemort or Severus Snape, could penetrate thoughts and memories, often without detection. While valuable in areas such as interrogation or defense, it raises serious concerns about privacy and autonomy. Without consent, the use of legilimency constitutes a violation as intimate as any physical trespass, leaving the subject vulnerable and exposed. Memory charms, or obliviation, present a similarly difficult ethical dilemma. These spells are often justified by necessity, particularly in upholding the International Statute of Secrecy by erasing the memories of Muggles who witness magical events. However, when used recklessly or maliciously, they can cause lasting damage. The case of Gilderoy Lockhart serves as a cautionary tale. His repeated misuse of Obliviation to steal the credit of others not only destroyed lives, but ultimately left him incapacitated when his own spell backfired. Even potions, which are often perceived as tools rather than spells, bring challenges to questions of consent. Love potions, for instance, are widely available in joke shops and at school, but their implications are deeply troubling. A potion-induced infatuation robs the affected person of true agency, manufacturing desire and creating relationships based on manipulation rather than genuine choice. What may seem harmless or humorous to students is, in truth, a profound violation of personal freedom. These examples underscore a broader truth. The existence of magical power does not justify its use. Can does not equal should. Ethical lapses, whether through negligence or deliberate abuse, cause real harm to individuals and, in many cases, lead to disgrace or ruin for the practitioner. A wizard or witch who disregards consent not only risks legal punishment, but also erodes the trust upon which professional and personal relationships are built. Careers in fields such as law enforcement, healing, education, and diplomacy depend on integrity as much as skill, and a single ethical breach can end a promising future. The study of ethics and consent, therefore, is not merely theoretical. It is essential preparation for life in a world where magic grants power that must be wielded with care. To respect another's mind and will is to recognize their humanity, and to ignore that principle is to reduce others to tools or obstacles. In a society where power differentials are real and often stark, this responsibility becomes even greater. Wizards and witches must remember that restraint is as important as ability, and that true mastery of magic lies not only in what one can accomplish, but in the wisdom to know when not to act. The ethical dangers of mind and influence magic are not abstract. They are etched into wizarding history through very real cases that demonstrate the consequences of ignoring consent. Each serves as a lesson in how magical power, when abused, can alter lives irreparably. One of the most infamous examples is that of Merrowby Gaunt, who used a love potion on the Muggle Tom Riddle Sr. Their relationship, built on artificial affection, eventually collapsed when she stopped administering the potion. Riddle abandoned both her and their unborn child, leaving behind a legacy of tragedy that shaped the life of their son, Tom Marvolo Riddleator, Lord Voldemort. This case illustrates the destructive cost of manipulating love, not only for those directly involved, but for future generations. What may appear to some as a private matter can ripple outward into consequences of extraordinary magnitude. Obliviation also presents troubling historical examples. In the 20th century, Gilderoy Lockhart made a career out of stealing others' accomplishments, erasing their memories so he could publish their stories as his own. His abuse of memory charms did not merely silence those who had earned recognition, it actively harmed them, leaving many permanently damaged. Lockhart's eventual exposure and downfall show how easily unethical use of magic, even when cloaked in fame and success, can collapse into disgrace. On a broader scale, the Ministry of Magic's Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes regularly employs memory charms to modify or erase Muggle recollections of magical events. While justified under the International Statute of Secrecy, these actions still raise questions of consent. The individuals affected are rarely aware of the alterations made to their minds, and the practice reveals a troubling dynamic. The wizarding community routinely exercises power over muggles without their knowledge, much less their approval. Though framed as a necessity, this creates an ongoing ethical tension between secrecy and autonomy. Legilimency and its counterpart, acclimancy, have also been at the heart of significant ethical controversies. During the Second Wizarding War, both Voldemort and Dumbledore employed legilimency in pursuit of their aims. While Voldemort used it to dominate and control, Dumbledore's use was more subtle, seeking insight into thoughts and intentions. Yet, even in its benign application, legilimency raises concerns about privacy and the right to mental freedom. Severus Snape's lessons with Harry Potter in acclimancy underscore how invasive the practice can feel, as Harry described Snape's probing of his mind as painful and violating. These cases make clear that the misuse of influence magic erodes not only trust but the very fabric of wizarding society. Laws exist to regulate the unforgivable curses, such as the Imperius Curse, which removes free will entirely, but the moral dilemmas surrounding subtler forms of manipulation remain less defined. Memory charms, love potions, and legilimency all fall into a grey area, where legality does not always align with morality. For students of magic, the lesson is simple but vital. Ethical responsibility extends beyond the letter of the law. True respect for others requires restraint, transparency, and a recognition that violating another's mind or choices is one of the gravest abuses of magical power. Wizards and witches who fail to heed this principle not only endanger their own futures, but perpetuate cycles of harm that history has already shown to be catastrophic. The infrastructure of the wizarding world rests upon a distinctive system of travel and communication, designed to connect a community that operates both within and alongside Muggle society. Unlike the networks of railways, post, and telephones relied upon by non-magical people, wizarding, transportation, and correspondence are shaped by enchantment, security concerns, and centuries of tradition. Understanding these systems is vital, as each comes with its own rules, risks, and limitations. The Floo network is among the most common means of magical travel. By using Floo powder in a connected fireplace, a witch or wizard may step from one hearth and emerge from another, sometimes across great distances. While efficient, it requires precision in pronunciation. Mispronounced destinations have famously resulted in accidents, such as Harry Potter's misadventure to Knockturn Alley. The network is also subject to ministry oversight, with connections registered and monitored, making it both a tool of convenience and a channel of surveillance. Portkeys provide another solution, often used for large gatherings or international events. These enchanted objects, disguised as mundane items, can transport groups instantly to a predetermined location. The Quidditch World Cup of 1994 employed portkeys to manage vast numbers of attendees while minimizing the risk of Muggle detection. Yet portkeys are tightly controlled by the Ministry of Magic, as unauthorized use poses both safety and secrecy risks. Their legality and regulation highlight how transportation in the wizarding world is as much a matter of governance as it is of magic. For individual mobility, brooms remain iconic. Beyond their sporting fame in Quidditch, broomsticks serve as personal transport, especially for younger witches and wizards. Though versatile, broom travel can be tiring over long distances and is subject to weather and visibility conditions. Furthermore, broom flights are vulnerable to detection by Muggles, and the International Statute of Secrecy requires discretion and, in some cases, concealment charms. The most advanced form of personal transportation is apparition. the ability to instantly relocate from one point to another. Mastery of apparition requires skill and training, as errors may lead to dangerous splinching, where parts of the body are left behind. For this reason, the Ministry enforces a licensing system, restricting it to witches and wizards over the age of 17 who pass a formal test. Moreover, apparition is often thwarted by wards, making it useless within certain protected areas such as Hogwarts or the Ministry itself. These limitations ensure that apparition, while powerful, cannot bypass the security measures of key institutions. When it comes to communication, the wizarding world relies heavily on Owlpost. Owls, imbued with natural magical instincts, can locate recipients without needing precise addresses. This system is reliable, but not infallible. Messages may be delayed, intercepted, or, in times of conflict, disrupted altogether. While owls serve as the primary means of personal and business correspondence, their dependence on physical delivery contrasts sharply with Muggle advances in electronic communication. Strong, magical wards can also interfere with Muggle technology, rendering devices like telephones or radios unreliable in heavily enchanted areas. This divergence explains why wizards have largely continued with Owlpost despite Muggle innovations. These infrastructures are not without choke points. The reliance on Ministry-controlled systems, such as Floo and Portkeys, creates vulnerabilities in times of war or political upheaval, when access may be restricted or monitored. Owlpost, too, can become a liability, as intercepting mail was a common tactic during Voldemort's rise to power. Wizards and witches must therefore learn not only how to use these methods, but also how to plan contingencies. A safe route today may be blocked tomorrow. A trusted channel of communication may suddenly become compromised. In the end, wizarding travel and communication are as much about strategy as convenience. They require forethought, backup plans, and an awareness of both magical and political landscapes. Movement and messaging are never neutral, they reflect the balance of freedom, control, and security within the magical world. Movement and messaging are never neutral, they reflect the balance of freedom, control, and security within the magical world. History makes this abundantly clear. During both wizarding wars, the reliability of travel and communication often meant the difference between safety and capture, between secrecy and exposure. The First Wizarding War saw the Death Eaters exploit these systems with ruthless efficiency. The Floo network, while useful for travel, was vulnerable to monitoring and interception. Many wizarding families began to restrict their Floo connections or disconnected altogether. Fearing infiltration or surveillance, the Ministry, under pressure, tightened control, creating bottlenecks that both sides learned to navigate or manipulate. In this climate, apparition became a favored tool for resistance fighters, but it was not without risk. Anti-disapparition jinxes were deployed by both the Ministry and the Death Eaters, meaning that apparition could not always guarantee escape. During the Second Wizarding War, these vulnerabilities grew more pronounced. The Order of the Phoenix, tasked with opposing Voldemort's forces, often had to improvise travel routes and backup plans. Portkeys were used sparingly, as their regulation made them too easily tracked by a Ministry that had fallen under Death Eater control. Instead, broom, travel, and apparition were combined with protective enchantments, though even these measures were sometimes compromised. When Harry Potter was moved from Privet Drive in 1997, the Order deliberately employed multiple methods: brooms, thestrals, and flying motorbikes alongside decoys, knowing that relying on a single system would invite disaster. Their fears proved correct, as the battle in the skies demonstrated how vulnerable movement could be when the enemy anticipated one's route. Communication, too, became a battleground. Owl Post, once taken for granted, could no longer be trusted. Letters risked interception, and several owls were targeted or injured by Death Eaters. The Order relied on alternate methods, such as Patronus messengers, which offered greater security since a corporeal Patronus is tied to the caster and cannot be easily forged. These charms became indispensable, especially for passing urgent messages without the risk of interception. The use of enchanted objects, like Sirius Black's Mirror Shard, also illustrates how innovation could create channels of communication outside the reach of Ministry or Death Eater interference. Even in peacetime, the limitations of magical infrastructure are clear. Hogwarts itself is warded against apparition, necessitating that students and staff travel by train, broom, or carriage. These wards serve both as protection and as a reminder that convenience is often sacrificed for security. Similarly, Muggle technology remains unreliable in heavily enchanted areas. Radios, however, were occasionally adapted by wizarding innovators, such as the clandestine Potterwatch broadcast during Voldemort's Second Rise, which shows how creative solutions emerge when standard systems fail. These examples reinforce the central truth. Wizarding travel and communication require flexibility and foresight. A skilled witch or wizard does not merely know the available methods, they know how to adapt when wards, regulations, or enemies close one path and force another. To move safely and speak freely in times of uncertainty is an art of strategy, as much as speed. The infrastructures of magic, while powerful, are never infallible. History teaches that survival often depends on anticipating their weaknesses and planning not only the journey itself, but also what to do when the chosen road is blocked. History teaches that survival often depends on anticipating weaknesses in these systems and planning not only the journey itself, but also what to do when the chosen road is blocked. Control of infrastructure has always been central to questions of governance, power, and even economics in the wizarding world. The Ministry of Magic maintains direct oversight of the Floo network, portkeys, and apparition licensing. This authority allows the Ministry to regulate who may travel, when, and by what means. In stable times, these measures serve to ensure safety and secrecy, but in unstable periods they become tools of control. During Voldemort's Second Rise, for example, the Ministry's corruption allowed Death Eaters to monitor and restrict travel through officially sanctioned channels. This left many witches and wizards dependent on unofficial methods, often at great personal risk. Regulation, therefore, has always carried both protective and repressive dimensions, depending on the political climate. Economic factors also intertwine with infrastructure. Goblins, who run Gringotts Wizarding Bank, control not only financial resources, but also access to certain enchanted objects and protective enchantments. While Gringotts is not directly responsible for transportation or communication, its influence over magical security makes it a quiet but significant power in how information and valuables are moved. The break-in, led by Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley in 1998, revealed both the strengths and the vulnerabilities of Goblin-run defenses, and demonstrated that economic institutions could become battlegrounds when political and military conflicts reached their peak. In addition, large events such as the Quidditch World Cup highlight how transportation infrastructure is deeply tied to state capacity. Organizing the 1994 Cup required vast coordination of portkeys, campsite protections, and anti-Muggle wards. The logistical success of such an event reflected the Ministry's ability to manage international movement on a scale that balanced secrecy with accessibility. However, the violent eruption of Death Eater activity after the final match also exposed how fragile such systems were when confronted with organized disruption. Communications infrastructure has followed similar patterns. The reliance on Owl Post ties the wizarding world to a natural system that cannot be entirely centralized. Yet the Ministry's control over other forms of magical messaging, such as enchanted fireplaces, creates avenues for monitoring. In wartime, underground networks like Potterwatch revealed that wizards and witches could establish alternative channels when official lines became compromised. Such improvisation demonstrates both resilience and the ongoing tension between centralized control and local autonomy. Ultimately, travel and communication in the wizarding world are not simply conveniences of daily life. They are levers of power that shape who can move freely, who can speak safely, and who can be silenced or confined. Control of these systems has been decisive in conflicts, and mastery of their risks and limitations remains a critical part of magical education. To understand wizarding infrastructure is therefore to understand not only the mechanics of magical life, but also the deeper structures of authority and resistance that have defined the course of its history. The history of the wizarding world is marked by recurring cycles of instability, often driven by the rise of dark wizards, the spread of cursed objects, or the deployment of fearsome creatures such as Dementors. Periods of relative calm are inevitably followed by times of unrest, and it is within these shifting patterns that the importance of security, defense, and resilience becomes clear. Neither individuals nor institutions are immune to these dangers, which makes preparation a necessity rather than a choice. The dark arts themselves represent not only a body of knowledge, but also a set of practices designed to harm, control, or corrupt. Spells such as the Cruciatus Curse, the Killing Curse, and the Imperious Curse are classified as unforgivable for good reason. Their use reflects a fundamental violation of magical ethics and carries severe legal and social consequences. Yet history demonstrates that when dark wizards rise, they rely on more than just forbidden curses. Subtler dangers, hexed artifacts, cursed jewelry, enchanted diaries can infiltrate homes and schools with devastating effects. The Diary of Tom Riddle, a Horcrux, serves as perhaps the most famous modern example, capable of possessing and manipulating a student under the guise of innocent correspondence. To counter such threats, the magical community has developed a range of defensive measures. Wards and protective enchantments safeguard locations such as Hogwarts, Gringotts, and the Ministry of Magic itself. These barriers, while invisible to most, can repel intruders, block apparition, and even conceal entire structures from Muggle detection. Their strength, however, depends on constant renewal and skilled maintenance. Without vigilance, even the strongest wards may erode over time or be circumvented by skilled adversaries. For individuals, defensive training remains the most important safeguard. Instruction in defense against the dark arts has long been a cornerstone of Hogwarts education, though the quality of this instruction has varied depending on political conditions. Students trained under Professor Lupin, for example, learned practical and effective methods of defense, from counter curses to Patronus casting. The Patronus Charm, one of the most advanced defensive spells taught to younger students, exemplifies the balance of magical skill and mental discipline required for true resilience. Against Dementors, who thrive on despair and fear, only the conjuring of a positive memory into corporeal form can provide protection. In this way, resilience is not merely a matter of technique, but of emotional fortitude. Safe dueling norms also play an important role. Formal dueling, whether in the club led by Gilderoy Lockhart or in the more rigorous training offered by experienced wizards, provides a controlled environment in which witches and wizards can practice defense without escalation. These norms stress restraint, precision, and awareness, preventing the careless use of spells that could cause unnecessary injury. They are essential for cultivating discipline, which proves critical when dueling leaves the classroom and enters the battlefield. Finally, incident response demonstrates the difference between uncoordinated reaction and organized resilience. The Ministry of Magic maintains departments such as the Aura Office and the Department of Magical Catastrophes precisely because dark incidents are never hypothetical. During the Battle of Hogwarts, the collective defense mounted by students, teachers, and members of the Order of the Phoenix illustrated how preparation, combined with courage, could repel even the most dangerous adversaries. Institutions that fail to plan for such events expose their members to unnecessary risk, while those that practice vigilance and readiness preserve lives and strengthen communal trust. The lesson is clear. Security in the wizarding world is not maintained by bravado, but by preparation. To live safely in a society that has endured Grindelwald, Voldemort, and countless lesser threats requires an understanding that resilience is cultivated, not assumed. From wards that guard the perimeter to the Patronus that shields the heart, every measure taken is an investment in safety. Wizards and witches who recognize this truth understand that true strength lies not in reckless defiance, but in the steady discipline that ensures survival through every cycle of darkness. The cycles of instability that shape wizarding history reveal that security must always adapt to new threats. Each era has tested the community in different ways, and the responses, whether successful or flawed, illustrate the evolving importance of preparation. In the 1940s, the rise of Gellert Grindelwald introduced the world to a dark wizard who combined raw magical power with ideological persuasion. Grindelwald's movement was not built on brute force alone, but on the promise of wizarding dominance over Muggles. His followers destabilized Europe, seizing control of key magical institutions and weaponizing fear. The resilience that ultimately defeated him was forged not only in combat, but also in strategy, with Albus Dumbledore standing as the central figure who could counter Grindelwald's vision. Their legendary duel in 1945 marked not just the fall of one dark wizard, but the restoration of a sense of balance between magical freedom and responsibility. Yet Grindelwald's war left scars, and it forced the wizarding world to reckon with how easily charismatic leaders could destabilize entire systems. The 1970s and early 1980s brought the first rise of Lord Voldemort, whose power surpassed Grindelwald's in brutality and scope. His campaign was marked by terror, assassinations, and infiltration of the Ministry itself. Cursed objects and dark rituals multiplied, spreading fear and suspicion. The auras of the time, including figures such as Alastor Moody, operated with extraordinary pressure, and the line between defense and retaliation blurred. Institutions strained under the weight of constant attacks, and even powerful families found their homes vulnerable. Voldemort's defeat in 1981, brought about not by wards or dueling skill, but by the sacrificial protection of Lily Potter, demonstrated that resilience sometimes lies not in spellwork but in the moral power of love and selflessness. The 1990s saw Voldemort's return, and with it, new lessons in security. Dementors, once trusted as the guards of Azkaban, turned into a weapon of the Dark Lord when they defected. Their allegiance revealed a flaw in institutional reliance on fear as a tool of control. The wizarding world learned that such creatures could not be bound by contracts or loyalty when their nature inclined them toward darkness. Resilience in this era had to be rethought. with the Patronus charm becoming more critical than ever for those resisting Dementor attacks. The Battle of Hogwarts in 1998 stands as the clearest example of communal resilience. Wards placed around the castle delayed the Death Eaters, giving defenders time to organize. Students and teachers, joined by members of the Order of the Phoenix, relied on both training and improvisation to hold their ground. Even house elves and centaurs entered the battle, proving that collective defense extended beyond human wizards. While victory was hard-won, the defense of Hogwarts underscored that resilience is strongest when it is shared across the community. From these cycles, several lessons emerge. First, dark wizards rise not only through power, but also through exploiting weaknesses in institutions. Second, reliance on singular defenses, whether Dementors at Azkaban or wards alone in fights collapse if those defenses fail. Third, true resilience requires adaptability. Wizards who knew only textbook dueling often faltered, while those who could improvise spells or work collectively endured. Finally, the human and ethical dimension cannot be ignored. The downfall of Voldemort was not achieved by the most powerful spell, but by choices rooted in loyalty, sacrifice, and unity. These patterns remind us that instability is not an exception in wizarding history, but a recurring condition. To study security and the dark arts is therefore not to indulge in paranoia, but to acknowledge that preparedness ensures survival when the cycle inevitably turns again. Institutions must be vigilant, individuals must be disciplined, and communities must recognize that resilience is not passive endurance, but an active commitment to defense, renewal, and the protection of one another. Perhaps the most revealing example of flawed security in wizarding history is the Ministry's long reliance on Dementors as the primary guards of Azkaban. For centuries, these creatures were stationed at the fortress to prevent the escape of prisoners. Their presence alone was enough to crush the will of even the most defiant witches and wizards, making escapes nearly impossible. On the surface, this arrangement seemed effective. Yet the cost of such a strategy was immense, both morally and strategically. Dementors feed on human happiness, leaving those near them with despair and hopelessness. Prolonged exposure drains prisoners of their very sense of self, which is why Azkaban became infamous not only as a place of confinement, but as a site of psychological devastation. The use of Dementors raised profound ethical questions. The Ministry tolerated these conditions in the name of control, but in doing so, it revealed how easily institutions can sacrifice human dignity for convenience. The fragility of this system became clear during Voldemort's return in the mid-1990s. The Dementors, drawn to his promise of freedom and chaos, abandoned the Ministry and joined his forces. This defection proved disastrous. A security system built on creatures of darkness collapsed overnight, and the very beings that once kept prisoners contained became weapons used to spread terror across Britain. The mass breakout from Azkaban in 1996, which freed many of Voldemort's most dangerous supporters, showed how a reliance on fear rather than principle leaves institutions vulnerable to collapse. The response required not just new defensive spells, but an entirely new philosophy of resilience. The Order of the Phoenix emphasized Patronus training for its members, recognizing that individual preparation was essential when institutions could no longer be trusted. The Patronus charm demanded more than technical ability. It required the caster to summon a memory of profound personal joy, showing that resilience against despair rested on inner strength and the ability to hold on to hope in dark times. The widespread teaching of this charm, particularly among Dumbledore's army at Hogwarts, illustrates how communal education in defense can strengthen an entire generation. The fall of the Demento system ultimately forced the Ministry to reconsider its approach to security. After Voldemort's defeat, discussions within the wizarding community highlighted the need for alternatives to Azkaban's Dark Guardians. While change has been slow, the case stands as a warning. A system that relies on the loyalty of creatures aligned with despair cannot endure. This case study reveals several lessons. First, a defensive strategy must be sustainable and must align with ethical standards, not merely immediate effectiveness. Second, true resilience depends on empowering individuals with the skills to defend themselves, rather than delegating safety entirely to institutions. Third, the cycle of instability often exploits moral compromises, and the wizarding world must recognize that shortcuts in security create vulnerabilities that adversaries can and will exploit. In this way, the history of Azkaban and its Dementors serves as more than a cautionary tale. It underscores the central truth that preparedness must be rooted in both ethical choices and practical readiness. Security built on fear corrodes itself, while security built on vigilance, training, and shared resilience can withstand even the darkest of times. The study of security in the wizarding world reveals a pattern of recurring threats, from dark wizards to cursed artifacts to the misuse of dangerous creatures. Each cycle of instability demonstrates that survival depends less on bravado and more on preparation. Wards, Patronus training, safe dueling, and coordinated response are all essential. But they succeed only when combined with ethical choices and a long-term vision. The main idea is that resilience is not passive. It is an active practice that demands vigilance, discipline, and moral clarity. When institutions rely on fear or shortcuts, as the Ministry did with Dementors at Azkaban, their defenses eventually collapse. When individuals and communities invest in training, solidarity, and ethical decision-making, as seen in the resistance at Hogwarts, they endure. Security in the wizarding world is therefore not only about repelling the dark arts, but about cultivating the wisdom and resilience that allow witches and wizards to stand firm when the cycle of darkness inevitably returns. The wizarding world sustains itself through a distinctive economy that blends traditional craftsmanship, magical labor, and tightly regulated institutions. Unlike Muggle societies that rely heavily on industrialization and technology, wizarding trade remains rooted in enchanted goods, specialized services, and the management of scarce resources. To understand how magical society functions, one must examine the flow of money, materials, and power through its primary institutions and markets. At the center of wizarding finance stands Gringotts Wizarding Bank, operated by goblins. It is both a repository for wealth and a gatekeeper for secure exchanges. Gringotts offers vault storage, currency exchange, and financial services that sustain everyday commerce. Yet, goblin management also creates tension. Goblins view ownership differently from wizards, believing that the maker of an object retains rights over it regardless of transfer. This difference in perspective has caused disputes that spill into broader questions of trust and cooperation. The wizarding economy thus rests on an uneasy but indispensable partnership between wizards and goblins. The primary currency is organized around gold galleons, silver sickles, and bronze nuts, standardized and controlled by the Ministry of Magic. Currency control allows the Ministry to manage both domestic markets and international trade. However, the lack of a visible taxation system in daily wizarding life raises questions about how the state sustains large-scale expenditures. such as the maintenance of the Flu network or international sporting events. This suggests either hidden forms of revenue collection or heavy reliance on goblin banking structures, which makes governance and economics deeply intertwined. Markets themselves center around hubs like Diagon Alley, which serves as both a commercial district and a cultural symbol. Shops such as Flourish and Blots, Ollivanders and Elop's Owl Emporium represent the backbone of magical trade, providing tools, books, and creatures essential to everyday life. Yet the alley also demonstrates how fragile commerce can be in times of instability. During Voldemort's second rise, several businesses closed or shifted hands under threat, revealing how dark forces disrupt not only safety but also economic continuity. Education and employment also shape the flow of resources. Hogwarts prepares students for professional roles, but career paths often depend on access to specialized knowledge and connections. Professions such as healers at St. Mungo's, aurors in the ministry, or craftsmen of enchanted goods depend on rigorous training and certification. Meanwhile, smaller trades such as apothecaries, brewmakers, and potion suppliers maintain local economies. This layered structure reflects both opportunities and barriers, where family connections and blood status historically influenced who could participate most fully in economic life. Internationally, trade flows through the International Confederation of Wizards and is visible in events like the Quidditch World Cup, which requires the movement of goods and services across borders. Magical creatures, potion ingredients, and enchanted artifacts also form part of a global market, though regulation is strict. The import and export of substances like dragon eggs or phoenix feathers are tightly controlled, as they carry both economic value and potential dangers. Smuggling and the black market thrive where regulation collides with high demand, a fact exemplified by Nocturne Alley and figures such as Borgin and Burks. The main idea is that wizarding economics is not simply about money. It is a system where resources, culture, and governance meet. Financial institutions such as Gringotts, regulatory oversight from the ministry, and the traditions of craft and trade all sustain daily life. Yet the system is fragile. War, political corruption, or disputes between goblins and wizards quickly ripple outward, disrupting flows of goods and trust. The wizarding world, therefore, depends on a careful balance of cooperation, regulation, and tradition to keep its economy functioning. The most significant economic disruption of recent history was the break-in at Gringotts in May of 1998. This event not only shook confidence in the security of the wizarding financial system, but also revealed the political entanglements that tied the bank to the conflict between Voldemort and his opponents. Gringotts had long been considered impregnable. Goblin-run defenses, combined with enchantments, dragons, and labyrinthine vault systems, were meant to guarantee that no thief could succeed. Yet, in 1998, Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley infiltrated the bank with the help of the Goblin Griphook. Their goal was to retrieve Helga Hufflepuff's cup, one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, from the Lestrange family vault. The group succeeded in entering the vault through disguise and deception, though they were nearly trapped when the vault's multiplying and burning curse activated. Their escape, aided by the theft of a Gringotts dragon, became one of the most dramatic breaches of magical security in living memory. The significance of this event reaches beyond the theft itself. For the first time, the illusion of absolute goblin control over wizarding wealth was shattered. Confidence in Gringotts as a secure repository was undermined, raising questions about whether any magical institution could remain immune to infiltration. Goblins viewed the incident as a betrayal, since Wizarding clients had colluded with a goblin insider, Griphook, who was killed in the escape. This deepened the long-standing mistrust between goblins and wizards, further complicating the economic relationship that sustained the wizarding world. The case also revealed how economic institutions can become directly tied to political struggles. Voldemort had already seized control of the Ministry, and through his followers, he exerted influence over Gringotts as well. The Lestrange Vault, heavily protected, served as a hiding place for one of his Horcruxes, which transformed the bank from a neutral financial institution into a battlefield in the larger war. When the bank was breached, Voldemort's rage confirmed that economic sites were no longer peripheral but central to the conflict. The aftermath forced both goblins and wizards to confront the vulnerabilities of their financial system. For goblins, it proved that their enchantments, though formidable, were not infallible when faced with cunning and desperation. For wizards, it raised questions about the reliability of a bank, whose leaders resented wizarding clients and whose loyalties might shift in moments of crisis. The break-in, therefore, serves as a case study in how political upheaval directly impacts economic stability, and how financial institutions can never be entirely separate from broader struggles for power. From this event, several economic lessons emerge. First, financial institutions rest not only on enchantments and guardianship, but also on trust. And once trust is broken, it cannot be easily restored. Second, neutrality in times of conflict is often an illusion. Gringotts, like the Ministry, became a contested site where opposing sides sought leverage. Third, the flow of resources determines the capacity of both states and resistance movements to act. When Voldemort lost access to one of his Horcruxes, his ability to project invulnerability weakened, showing that even symbolic assets stored in economic centers carry immense strategic weight. The Gringotts break-in illustrates that the wizarding economy is never just about money or goods. It is about power, legitimacy, and the ability of institutions to maintain stability in times of chaos. When those institutions falter, the effects are felt across society. From ordinary shopkeepers in Diagon Alley to the highest levels of magical governance, the wizarding world sustains itself not only through laws and infrastructure, but also through the narratives that shape how communities understand events. Media, gossip, and entertainment serve as cultural glue, creating shared stories and influencing public trust. Yet the forms these take differ greatly from Muggle society, where print, cinema, radio, and television dominate. The most powerful institution in wizarding media is the Daily Prophet, a newspaper that reaches households across Britain. Its influence is immense, partly because no comparable mass communication technology exists among wizards. Without televisions, telephones, or the internet, the Prophet holds near monopoly power over information. Its record, however, is deeply mixed. At times, it has functioned as a reliable source of news, but during the mid-1990s, it downplayed Voldemort's return and actively discredited Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore. This episode reveals how wizarding media can be manipulated by political forces, with public opinion shifting dramatically as a result. Alternative voices exist, though they are often marginalized. The Quibbler, edited by Xenophilius Lovegood, is dismissed by many as eccentric, filled with stories about imaginary creatures or conspiracy theories. Yet, during the Ministry's campaign to deny Voldemort's return, the Quibbler became the only platform willing to publish Harry Potter's first-hand account of events. What began as fringe journalism briefly became the most sought-after publication in wizarding Britain, demonstrating how media outside the mainstream can suddenly gain importance in moments of crisis. Popular culture extends beyond newspapers. which weekly caters to domestic readers, offering lifestyle advice, gossip, and light features. Its coverage of figures like Gilderoy Lockhart shows how celebrity culture shapes wizarding society just as it does in the Muggle world. Meanwhile, the Wizarding Wireless Network broadcasts music, comedy, and news, serving as the magical equivalent of radio. During Voldemort's rise, this platform became a tool for resistance, as Potterwatch aired secret programs that encouraged hope and solidarity. Unlike Muggle broadcasting, which depends on complex technology, Wizarding Wireless relies on enchantments, making it less vulnerable to power cuts or technical failures, but still dependent on secrecy to avoid detection. Entertainment in the wizarding world is shaped by magic itself. Musical performances, such as those by Celestina Warbeck, often incorporate interactive charms that engage audiences directly. Wizarding literature and enchanted books likewise break the boundary between reader and text, as seen in the moving illustrations of children's stories or the hostile behaviors of certain magical tomes like the Monster Book of Monsters. Even portraits participate in public opinion, as painted figures can converse, share gossip, and spread ideas across households and institutions. This blending of art and enchantment creates a culture where the line between media and magic is porous. The contrast with Muggle media is striking. While Muggles developed mass communication through mechanical invention, wizards relied on magical adaptation of older forms. Print remains central. Radio exists in enchanted form, and public discourse is filtered through a small number of voices. The absence of film, television, and digital networks leaves wizarding society both more traditional and more susceptible to manipulation. A rumor in the Prophet, or a scandal in which weekly can ripple across the entire community with little competition to challenge or verify the narrative. The lesson is clear. Media in the wizarding world is not a neutral reflection of events, but an active shaper of public opinion. When controlled or influenced by political powers, it can obscure truth and sow distrust. When used creatively, as with the Quibbler or Potterwatch, it can empower resistance and preserve morale. To live responsibly in the wizarding world requires not only reading the news, but questioning it, understanding the cultural forces at work, and recognizing how enchantment itself transforms the stories that wizards and witches tell each other. The late 1990s provide one of the clearest examples of how wizarding media directly influenced public opinion and political stability. When Lord Voldemort returned to full strength in 1995 after the Triwizard Tournament, the event marked a turning point, not only in magical history, but also in the credibility of the press. At first, the Daily Prophet aligned itself with the Ministry of Magic, which, under Cornelius Fudge, refused to acknowledge Voldemort's return. For over a year, the newspaper carried stories that cast doubt on Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore. Harry was portrayed as unstable, attention-seeking, and unreliable, while Dumbledore was suggested to be senile or politically ambitious. This campaign of disinformation had significant effects. Many families doubted the warnings of impending danger. Communities dismissed rumors of Death Eater activity, and the wizarding world continued daily life as if no threat existed. The Prophet's stance isolated Harry socially, even among peers at Hogwarts, and weakened resistance by creating widespread complacency. The situation shifted when Voldemort's return became undeniable. In June of 1996, during the battle in the Department of Mysteries, multiple Death Eaters were captured and witnesses confirmed the Dark Lord's presence. The Prophet was forced to reverse its position overnight. Articles that once mocked Harry now lauded him as the chosen one. This sudden reversal illustrates both the fragility of trust in wizarding media and the immense power such institutions hold in shaping perception. For more than a year, misinformation delayed collective preparation, and only after public evidence was overwhelming did the narrative shift. The case also demonstrates the danger of a near monopoly in communication. Without competing platforms, the prophet's voice drowned out alternative accounts. Only the quibbler, dismissed as eccentric, provided Harry a channel to publish the truth. When his interview appeared there in 1996, readers who normally mocked the paper began to seek it out. This brief moment, when a fringe publication outpaced the dominant one, shows how fragile official narratives can be when events contradict propaganda. The long-term consequences of this period were profound. Public trust in the ministry and the prophet eroded, leaving both institutions weakened. During Voldemort's open control of the ministry in 1997, the prophet became little more than a mouthpiece for propaganda, publishing decrees against Muggleborns and glorifying Death Eater victories. Yet, by then, its influence had diminished, as underground broadcasts like Potterwatch proved far more reliable to ordinary witches and wizards. This case reveals several lessons about wizarding media. First, alignment with political power can give the press great influence. But when that power is corrupted, media becomes a tool of manipulation. Second, public opinion can shift rapidly once truth emerges, but lost credibility is difficult to recover. Third, in the absence of diverse media outlets, misinformation spreads unchecked, creating vulnerability for society as a whole. The Daily Prophet's record during Voldemort's return remains a cautionary tale. It demonstrates that in a society where enchantments shape communication, truth depends not only on magical skill but on journalistic integrity. Wizards and witches must learn to read critically, question authority, and seek multiple perspectives, if they hope to avoid repeating the errors that once left them blind to the return of the darkest wizard of their age. Magic provides the foundation for recreation and identity. Sports, games, and leisure activities are more than entertainment in wizarding society. They foster cultural belonging, create international connections, and sometimes reflect deeper political tensions. The most prominent example is Quidditch, often described as the wizarding world's greatest sport. Played on broomsticks, with 4 balls and 7 players per team, it combines athleticism with magical skill. Quidditch transcends school competition, appearing in professional leagues across Britain and beyond, and culminating in international events such as the Quidditch World Cup. The sport carries enormous cultural weight. Hogwarts houses define themselves in part through their Quidditch teams, while professional matches inspire loyalties that pass down through families. The 1994 World Cup illustrated both the unifying and destabilizing effects of the sport. Witches and wizards from around the globe gathered peacefully to celebrate the game. Yet the event also became the site of violent Death Eater demonstrations, reminding all that even moments of joy can be disrupted by politics. Beyond Quidditch, the wizarding world enjoys smaller-scale games that emphasize magical creativity. Gobstones, a children's game, involves enchanted stones that squirt foul-smelling liquid at players who lose points. Though less glamorous than Quidditch, it fosters a sense of community and has its own organized leagues. Exploding Snap, a card game prone to combustive surprises, entertains students in common rooms, while chessboards with animated pieces transform strategy into a more vivid and sometimes daunting experience. These pastimes show how even casual games are infused with enchantment, making leisure an extension of magical culture itself. Leisure is not limited to sport and games. Wizards also invest in festivals, music, and performance. Hogwarts feasts mark seasonal events such as Halloween, Christmas, and the end of term. reminding students that communal celebration is integral to magical education. Social occasions, like the Yule Ball, held during the Tri-Wizard Tournament of 1994, reveal how dance, fashion, and performance art echo through wizarding traditions. Popular music, performed by figures such as Celestina Warbeck or bands like the Weird Sisters, circulates through enchanted wireless broadcasts and live performances, blending enchantment with artistry. These activities differ significantly from Muggle pastimes. While Muggles built professional football leagues, cinemas, and technological forms of mass entertainment, wizards rely on magical adaptations of more traditional forms. They have no televisions or digital screens, but instead rely on enchanted portraits, wireless programs, and live gatherings. Where Muggles separate sport, art, and communication into distinct industries, the wizarding world often blurs the lines, with moving images in books or interactive concerts that make audiences participants in the performance. The cultural importance of sport and leisure lies not only in enjoyment but in identity. A Quidditch team allegiance can bind families together just as Hogwarts house loyalty shapes student experience. Shared games and festivals create cohesion in a society divided by blood status, class, and politics. At the same time, these spaces are never entirely free from conflict. Just as the Quidditch World Cup of 1994 was disrupted by Death Eaters, so too can celebrity culture or sporting events become tools of propaganda. Yet their persistence in every era shows how deeply recreation is tied to resilience. In moments of crisis, playing a game or gathering for music and feasts is an act of continuity, a reminder that community life endures even under threat. The study of sports and leisure, therefore, reveals more than magical pastimes. It shows how wizards and witches use enchantment not only for survival, but for joy, belonging, and shared identity. These cultural practices remind us that resilience is measured not just in defense against the dark arts, but in the ability to celebrate life together. The Quidditch World Cup of 1994 remains one of the best documented examples of how sport functions as both a cultural celebration and a logistical challenge in the wizarding world. Hosted in Britain, it drew thousands of witches and wizards from across the globe, requiring immense coordination to balance secrecy, travel, and security. From the perspective of planning and scale, the event resembles the Muggle FIFA World Cup or the Olympic Games. Just as Muggle nations converge for football or athletics, wizarding nations gathered to showcase the highest level of broomstick sport. Supporters decorated campsites with national colors. Fans brought mascots enchanted to perform elaborate displays. And the atmosphere mirrored the international camaraderie and rivalry seen at Muggle tournaments. The passion of fans waving flags, chanting for their teams, and celebrating victories shows that sport, magical or not, unites people through shared excitement. Yet the differences are just as striking. Where Muggles rely on stadiums, tickets, and transport systems like railways or airlines, the wizarding organizers used portkeys, enchantments, and protective wards. Entire campsites were hidden with charms to avoid Muggle detection. And the stadium itself was concealed and expanded far beyond natural capacity through magic. While Muggle governments often grapple with traffic, overcrowding, or security checks, the Ministry of Magic faced the challenge of preventing exposure of the magical community while managing thousands of international visitors. This comparison highlights how secrecy shapes wizarding infrastructure in ways Muggles never need to consider. The match itself between Ireland and Bulgaria demonstrated how Quidditch combines athletic skill with magical spectacle. Players performed maneuvers at speeds no Muggle sport could replicate, while mascots such as the Vela and Leprechauns provided performances that blurred the line between sport and enchantment. The controversy caused by the Vela's influence on male spectators shows how magical elements complicate fairness and safety in ways Muggle sporting authorities would never face. It is as though a half-time performance directly altered the psychology of fans and even players, raising ethical questions about the role of enchantment in sport. However, just as Muggle tournaments sometimes attract political demonstrations or violence, the 1994 World Cup was marred by unrest. Death Eaters staged an attack in the aftermath, terrorizing Muggle campsite managers and casting the Dark Mark into the sky. This chilling event parallels Muggle instances where global tournaments become flashpoints for protest or conflict, such as political boycotts or outbreaks of violence at football matches. In both cases, sport becomes a stage not only for play, but also for the expression of deeper tensions within society. The lessons from the 1994 Quidditch World Cup are clear. Like Muggle tournaments, international wizarding sport can build unity, pride, and cultural connection. Yet it also reveals vulnerabilities, logistical strain, political exploitation, and the fragility of large gatherings when security is breached. Where Muggle societies worry about crowd control or political protest, wizards must also contend with the risks of enchantments, secrecy, and the potential for dark forces to turn moments of joy into moments of fear. In the end, the Quidditch World Cup shows that sport is never just about the game. It is about identity, community, and the capacity of a society to manage the risks that come with collective celebration. Whether in the wizarding or Muggle world, the power of sport lies in its ability to gather people together and in the vulnerabilities that gathering inevitably creates. Everyday life in the wizarding world is woven together not only by work, school, and governance, but also by the rhythms of food, celebration, and domestic culture. These practices provide continuity across generations and create a sense of belonging that sustains magical communities through both peace and conflict. Food holds a special place in wizarding life. At Hogwarts, great feasts mark the start of term, holidays such as Christmas and Halloween, and the end of the school year. These occasions are enchanted with abundance. Tables groaning with roast meats, puddings, pumpkin juice, and treacle tarts, all prepared by house elves in the kitchens below. Yet this magic has limits. According to Gamp's law of elemental transfiguration, food cannot be created out of nothing. It must be grown, harvested, or acquired before it can be summoned or multiplied. A reminder that wizarding society is tied to agriculture and trade just as much as the Muggle world. Everyday fare includes both traditional British staples and uniquely magical creations. Wizarding sweets like chocolate frogs, fizzing wispies, and Bertie Bots, every flavour beans bring enchantment into the simplest of pleasures. Drinks such as butterbeer, pumpkin juice, and fire whiskey circulate through social life, linking childhood treats with adult indulgence. Honeydukes in Hogsmeade exemplifies the way wizarding food culture combines charm with craft, offering both familiar and unpredictable delights. Festivals and celebrations mark the passage of the year. Halloween feasts recall old traditions of warding off spirits, while Christmas at Hogwarts blends magical enchantments with Muggle customs of trees, presents, and carols. The Yule Ball of 1994 demonstrated how special occasions bring together music, dance, and fashion, showcasing not only the bonds between students, but also international cultural exchange. Weddings, such as Bill Weasley and Fleur Delacour's, are similarly infused with tradition and charm, featuring enchanted decorations and rituals that highlight both family and community life. Everyday leisure also reflects the blending of magic with ordinary routines. Wizards shop in places like Diagon Alley or Hogsmeade for daily necessities, while families gather in homes where portraits speak. Clocks track the whereabouts of loved ones, and knitting needles sometimes click by themselves. These domestic details distinguish wizarding life from Muggle routines, while still echoing the same need for comfort, family, and familiarity. The contrast with Muggle society is significant. Muggles rely on technology, refrigerators, stoves, or mass-produced goods, while wizards depend on enchantments, creatures, and magical labor. House elves prepare meals in many wizarding households, while in Muggle life, domestic work is more evenly shared among people or machines. This difference highlights how everyday magic sustains culture, but also how it raises questions of labor and ethics, since the comforts of feasts and abundance often rest on the unacknowledged service of others. The importance of food and festivals lies not only in sustenance, but in memory and identity. A Hogwarts feast binds students of every house to a shared tradition. A wizarding wedding affirms bonds between families, even across cultural or national boundaries. A box of chocolate frogs carries nostalgia for childhood, long after school years have ended. These daily and seasonal rituals remind witches and wizards who they are, where they belong, and what they share, even when larger society is divided by politics or threatened by dark forces. In this way, food and festivals serve as more than decoration. They are acts of cultural resilience, affirming continuity in the face of change. Whether in the enchanted hall of Hogwarts or the kitchen of the Burrow, the simple rituals of eating, gathering, and celebrating reveal the heart of wizarding life. The Yule Ball, held during the Triwizard Tournament at Hogwarts in December 1994, offers a vivid example of how wizarding festivals function as cultural expression and international diplomacy. While framed as a social event for students, it carried layers of meaning about identity, tradition, and the blending of magical communities. The ball began as part of the long tradition attached to the Triwizard Tournament, which brought together Hogwarts, Boxbattens, and Durmstrang. Like many wizarding customs, the Yule Ball reflected both ancient ritual and youthful festivity. At its core was the blending of formal dance, magical enchantments, and seasonal celebration. The Great Hall was transformed with snow-covered furs and frost-covered garlands, creating a space that reflected both the winter season and the enchantments of wizarding craft. For students, the Yule Ball was more than spectacle. It marked a rite of passage, giving younger witches and wizards the chance to experience social norms of courtship, presentation, and public performance. The awkwardness of choosing dates, the anticipation of dress robes, and the excitement of dancing revealed how festivals function as spaces where students test themselves in new roles. Even Harry Potter, more accustomed to battles than ballrooms, found himself navigating the challenges of etiquette and expectation. Culturally, the ball also emphasized how music and performance shape wizarding leisure. The Weird Sisters, one of the most famous wizarding bands, performed live, blending traditional ball with more modern wizarding rock. This mix of old and new reflected how wizarding society holds tradition in one hand, while embracing creativity in the other. Much like Muggle concerts or school dances, the event provided a sense of belonging. But it was enriched by enchantments that elevated sound, spectacle, and atmosphere. Diplomatically, the Yule Ball carried even greater weight. It was not only Hogwarts students who danced beneath the enchanted ceiling, but also guests from France and Northern Europe. Boxbatten students, with their elegance and poise, and Durmstrang students, with their striking uniforms and martial reputation, added an international dimension to the gathering. Just as the Olympic Games foster Mughal cultural exchange, the Yule Ball embodied wizarding diplomacy, reminding students that education and festivity can serve as bridges across borders. The significance of the Yule Ball lies in how it combined the personal with the political, the joyful with the serious. For individuals, it was a chance to grow into adulthood, test boundaries, and create memories. For communities, it reinforced tradition and celebrated the shared culture of magic. For nations, it symbolized cooperation and peace at a time when dark forces were gathering strength. Like Hogwarts feasts or wizarding weddings, the Yule Ball demonstrated that food, music, and ritual sustain more than bodies. They sustain identities, communities, and even alliances. These celebrations reveal how everyday life in the wizarding world, enchanted though it may be, serves the same purpose as in the Muggle world: to bind people together in shared joy. Even when shadows gather beyond the walls, Christmas at Hogwarts is one of the most enduring traditions in the wizarding world. Each year, the school transforms into a place of warmth and festivity, blending magical enchantment with long-standing cultural customs. The Great Hall is decorated with towering Christmas trees, garlands, and floating candles, creating an atmosphere that captures the wonder of the season. Snow charms fall gently without melting, and feasts present an abundance of roasts, puddings, and wizarding treats. For students, these celebrations provide a sense of continuity, marking the midpoint of the school year with joy and rest. Yet Christmas at Hogwarts also reveals deeper truths about community. For most students, the season is a brief return to family homes. But for some, such as Harry Potter, it represents something very different. Harry often remained at the castle, having little welcome awaiting him at the Dursleys. In this way, Hogwarts itself became his home, and Christmas feasts symbolized not just celebration, but belonging. The gifts exchanged between friends, whether sweaters knitted by Mrs. Weasley or chocolate frogs passed among classmates, reminded Harry that chosen family could replace the absence of biological kin. Christmas also highlighted cultural exchange within the wizarding community. Wizards observed the holiday in ways that echoed Muggle traditions' trees' presence, and carols infused them with enchantments. Crackers conjured magical hats or unexpected creatures. Snow remained crisp without melting, and decorations shifted color or moved of their own accord. This blending of the magical with the familiar revealed how wizarding culture adapts and reshapes wider traditions, making them uniquely its own. At the same time, Christmas at Hogwarts underscored exclusion and absence. While Harry found warmth in the celebrations, others, such as Severus Snape, Draco Malfoy, or Tom Riddle, decades earlier, experienced the season differently. Riddle, who grew up in an orphanage, once remained at Hogwarts during the holidays, reflecting both his lack of family and his detachment from community life. These examples remind us that festivals, while designed for unity, also reveal who stands outside the circle of belonging. The contrast between joy and loneliness at Christmas highlights the cultural role of festivals. They are not only about food and decoration, but about the creation of memory, identity, and connection. For Harry, each Christmas feast deepened his bond to the wizarding world, marking Hogwarts as his true home. For others, the same season reminded them of loss or alienation. The enduring lesson of Christmas at Hogwarts is that festivals reveal the heart of a community. They bring together food, tradition, and magic. But their true power lies in how they affirm who belongs. Even in times of danger, such as the years when Voldemort's return loomed over the castle, the continuation of Christmas feasts symbolized resilience. In gathering to share food and laughter, Hogwarts preserved hope, reminding all that even in dark times, joy can be an act of defiance. While the infrastructure of wizarding travel includes regulated systems like the Floo network, portkeys, and apparition, daily life also depends on less formal modes of magical transport. These everyday practices reveal how families, schools, and individuals adapt magic to meet practical needs. And they highlight the contrasts between wizarding and Muggle approaches to mobility. The most iconic example is the broomstick, which serves not only as sporting equipment for Quidditch, but also as a practical vehicle. Families often provide children with brooms long before they are licensed for apparition, giving broom travel the same cultural place as bicycles in the Muggle world. Models range from simple clean sweeps to hyperman's firebolts, and ownership often reflects both personal identity and social status. While brooms are efficient for short distances, they are limited by weather, visibility, and secrecy concerns, reminding us that broomstick travel, though iconic, is neither universal nor without risk. Another form of transport, though officially banned in Britain, is the flying carpet. Once common in wizarding households, carpets are considered family vehicles in some parts of the world, particularly in Asia and the Middle East. Their prohibition by the Ministry of Magic reflects the tension between cultural diversity and centralized regulation, where Muggles argue about cars, trains, or buses. The wizarding world debates whether flying carpets should be recognized as legitimate vehicles or dismissed as Muggle artifacts. The ban shows how regulation shapes not only infrastructure but also cultural expression. Enchanted objects also provide everyday mobility. The flying motorbike, once owned by Sirius Black and later used by Hagrid, demonstrates how Muggle inventions can be adapted with magical enhancements, in this case to fly, carry oversized passengers, and resist spells. Such adaptations blur the line between magical and non-magical infrastructure, illustrating that wizarding transport can sometimes mirror Muggle innovation while still relying on enchantments. Similar experiments appear in bewitched cars, such as Arthur Weasley's Ford Anglia, which not only flew but became semi-sentient after prolonged magical use. These examples reveal both creativity and controversy, since misuse of enchanted vehicles can breach the statute of secrecy and draw ministry intervention. For communal or institutional travel, Hogwarts offers distinctive examples. The Hogwarts Express, departing from King's Cross Station on Platform 9 and 3/4, symbolizes the union of Muggle infrastructure with magical concealment. Students board a train hidden in plain sight, traveling through both Muggle and magical landscapes before reaching the castle. On arrival, younger students are transported by boats across the Black Lake, while older students ride in carriages pulled by thestrals, visible only to those who have witnessed death. These forms of travel remind us that magical transportation is as much about symbolism and tradition as efficiency. The connection to the larger infrastructure system is clear. While regulated systems such as portkeys or apparition require ministry permits and monitoring, broomsticks, carriages, and enchanted vehicles reflect the flexibility of everyday life. Families adapt whatever means they can afford or enchant, while institutions like Hogwarts embed transportation into rites of passage. Yet the same risks and choke points remain. Misuse of flying objects can draw Muggle attention, unregulated enchantments can backfire, and creatures like thestrals remind us that magical travel always carries cultural and emotional layers. In this way, daily transportation links back to infrastructure. The wizarding world maintains formal systems for safety and control, but the rhythms of ordinary life depend on informal, creative, and sometimes controversial forms of travel. Just as Muggles rely on cars, buses, and bicycles beyond state railways or airlines, wizards rely on broomsticks, carriages, and enchanted objects beyond the flue or portkey. Together, these layers create a transport culture that is practical, symbolic, and deeply tied to questions of secrecy and regulation. The Hogwarts Express stands as one of the most enduring symbols of magical transportation in Britain. Departing from King's Cross Station in London, on the hidden platform 9 3/4, it carries students to and from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry each year. More than just a train, the Hogwarts Express represents the blending of magical infrastructure, secrecy, and tradition. Unlike broomsticks, portkeys, or apparition, the Express is a communal form of travel. All Hogwarts students, regardless of background, are expected to board the train, which creates a shared rite of passage. For many, such as Muggle-born students, the platform is their first glimpse of magical society, concealed within a bustling Muggle hub. The act of walking through a solid barrier to access the hidden platform encapsulates the principle of secrecy, while reinforcing that entry into the wizarding world requires both courage and knowledge. The train itself demonstrates the intersection of Muggle technology and magical adaptation. Though it resembles an ordinary steam engine, it is enchanted to travel quickly, conceal itself from Muggle detection, and carry an extraordinary number of passengers. Unlike more flexible systems, such as apparition, the Express operates on a fixed schedule, anchoring the rhythm of the school year. Its consistency provides stability, reminding students and parents alike that some traditions remain unshaken even in times of war or instability. The cultural significance of the train extends far beyond logistics. Compartments serve as social spaces where friendships are formed, rivalries established, and alliances tested. Harry Potter met Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger on his very first journey aboard the Express, a meeting that shaped the course of wizarding history. Conflicts also unfolded in this space, such as Draco Malfoy's attempts to assert dominance or later confrontations during the rise of Voldemort. The train thus functions as a microcosm of Hogwarts itself, where community, conflict, and identity play out in miniature. Before students even arrive at the castle, security has also been a recurring concern. In 1993, Dementors boarded the Express while searching for Sirius Black, revealing the vulnerability of even established infrastructure to political events. This intrusion frightened students, disrupted the sense of safety associated with the train, and forced the school to address how to balance tradition with protection. The incident reinforced a broader truth. No method of magical travel, however familiar, is immune to the cycles of instability that shape the wizarding world. When compared to larger infrastructure systems like the Floo network or Apparition, the Hogwarts Express represents something unique. It is not the fastest or most flexible means of travel, but it embodies cultural continuity. Just as the Floo network symbolizes regulation and monitoring, and Apparition symbolizes independence, the Hogwarts Express symbolizes community and tradition. It ties wizarding education to a predictable journey that every student shares, reinforcing unity across house, blood status, and background. The lesson of the Hogwarts Express is that magical transportation is never just about movement. It carries memory, identity, and symbolism. Boarding the train each year reaffirms the bond between students and their school, while also highlighting how magical society blends enchantment with elements borrowed from the Muggle world. The Express is at once infrastructure and ritual, a reminder that wizarding travel shapes not only where people go, but who they become along the way. Though Hogwarts is the best-known school to British witches and wizards, it is only one of several great magical institutions around the world. Each school reflects the traditions, geography, and cultural values of its region, showing that magical education is as diverse as the communities it serves. Comparing them reveals how curriculum, environment, and philosophy shape not only individual students but the societies they rejoin as adults. Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, located in the Pyrenees of southern France, is renowned for elegance, refinement, and artistry. Its architecture reflects French palatial style, and its students are known for discipline, courtesy, and excellence in charm work and alchemy. Beauxbatons produces witches and wizards, highly regarded in diplomacy, arts, and theoretical magic. The school is also known for its emphasis on aesthetics and presentation, embodying a cultural belief that magic should harmonize with beauty and order. Durmstrang Institute, in contrast, reflects a very different philosophy. Situated somewhere in Northern Europe, it is famous for secrecy, with even its exact location carefully hidden. Durmstrang emphasizes martial discipline, physical endurance, and a curriculum that does not shy away from teaching the dark arts alongside defensive magic. While controversial, this approach prepares its students for resilience in harsher climates and conflicts. Figures such as Viktor Krum, the celebrated Quidditch seeker, demonstrate that Durmstrang produces wizards who are both formidable and competitive on the global stage. In North America, Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry stands atop Mount Greylock in Massachusetts. Founded in the 17th century by Isolde Serre, a descendant of Salazar Turin, Ilvermorny grew from a modest cottage school into one of the most respected magical institutions in the world. Its house system mirrors Hogwarts, but with its own symbols: Thunderbird, Wampus, Horned Serpent, and Pukwudgie, reflecting both Native American influences and colonial history. Ilvermorny's emphasis on inclusivity and innovation has shaped a distinctly American magical culture, balancing old European traditions with local practices. Other schools, though less documented, also shape magical education worldwide. Castelo Bruxo in Brazil specializes in herbology and magazoology, benefiting from the Amazon's vast biodiversity. Mahutakoro in Japan emphasizes academic rigor and discipline, providing robes that change color as students advance. Ouagadougou in Africa is renowned for wandless magic and astronomy, reflecting the strengths of its cultural and magical traditions. These institutions highlight that magical education is not monolithic but diverse, adapted to environment and heritage. The significance of this diversity lies in how it shapes international relations. Just as Muggle universities produce distinct schools of thought, magical institutions influence diplomacy, trade, and collaboration. The Triwizard Tournament, re-established in 1994, was intended not only as a sporting event but also as a means of strengthening ties between Hogwarts, Beauxbatons, and Durmstrang. Though the tournament ended in tragedy, it reflected the larger truth that education is also a vehicle for cultural diplomacy. When compared with Hogwarts, these schools reveal the strengths and limitations of the British model. Hogwarts emphasizes broad training and house identity, while Beauxbatons stresses refinement, Durmstrang discipline, and Ilvermorny inclusivity. Each represents a philosophy of what it means to be a witch or wizard, shaping graduates who carry those values into their careers. The study of magical education beyond Hogwarts shows that learning is not only about spells and exams, but about how societies imagine the role of magic itself, whether through artistry, resilience, inclusivity, or innovation. Wizarding schools prepare generations to sustain their communities. Understanding these differences allows witches and wizards to navigate a global, magical society with greater respect and perspective. Magical schools not only train young witches and wizards in practical skills, but also serve as mirrors of their nation's histories, landscapes, and values. The differences between schools highlight how cultural identity is embedded in magical education, shaping how students see themselves and their role in the larger wizarding world. Boxbaton's Academy of Magic exemplifies the French tradition of artistry and diplomacy. Its emphasis on elegance, discipline, and refinement reflects a national identity that values cultural sophistication. Even the school's presentation during international gatherings, students arriving in graceful formation, led by Madame Maxime, demonstrates how France projects an image of poise and civility. Boxbaton's graduates often pursue roles in diplomacy, international law, and magical arts, making the school a reflection of France's role as a cultural and political center in the wizarding world. Durmstrang Institute, by contrast, reflects a harsher Northern European tradition. Its curriculum, with its focus on martial training and exposure to the dark arts, suggests a national identity forged in climates of conflict and endurance. Secrecy about its location and admission policies, which exclude Muggle-borns, also reflect cultural isolationism and pride. Figures like Victor Krum, who competed as Bulgaria's seeker in the 1994 Quidditch World Cup, demonstrate how Durmstrang produces not only powerful wizards, but also national icons. The school's philosophy echoes the values of resilience, strength, and loyalty to tradition, which shape its graduates' sense of identity. Ilvermorny, located in Massachusetts, embodies a distinctly American approach. Founded by Isolde Serre, who blended European heritage with New World traditions, the school symbolizes the American ideal of inclusivity and adaptation. Its house system reflects indigenous and colonial influences, representing a blend of cultures that shaped the continent. Ilvermorny's philosophy reflects the American tendency toward innovation and democratization of education, offering magical training to students of all backgrounds. Where Hogwarts emphasizes lineage and house prestige, Ilvermorny emphasizes opportunity, reflecting broader American cultural ideals. Further abroad, schools like Castelo Bruxo in Brazil, Ouagadougou in Africa, and Mahuta Koro in Japan deepen this pattern. Castelo Bruxo's focus on herbology and magazology reflects Brazil's Amazonian biodiversity, tying national identity to stewardship of magical ecosystems. Ouagadougou's reputation for wandless magic demonstrates an African tradition of discipline and deep magical control. Contrasting with Europe's reliance on wands, Mahuta Koro emphasizes strict academic achievement and excellence in Quidditch, reflecting Japan's national values of discipline, honor, and teamwork. Taken together, these schools reveal how magical education cannot be separated from cultural context. Each institution reflects the history, geography, and national pride of its country. Graduates carry these values into the global magical community, shaping international diplomacy, trade, and collaboration. Just as Muggle universities often serve as ambassadors of national character, wizarding schools project the ideals of their homelands. Culture in the wizarding world is shaped not only by law, education, and sport, but also by art and entertainment. These practices reflect how witches and wizards imagine themselves, share stories, and preserve memory. Unlike in the Muggle world, where art is static or technology-driven, wizarding creativity is often alive, interactive, and enchanted, blurring the line between performance and magic itself. Literature is central to magical culture. not only in academic form but in popular writing. Standard spellbooks, such as the Standard Book of Spells or 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, provide essential training. But the publishing world also includes works of fiction and eccentric research. Gilderoy Lorchart's autobiographies, though fraudulent, achieved bestseller status and illustrate the role of celebrity in publishing. The Tales of Beedle the Bard represents the wizarding equivalent of folklore, passed down for centuries and carrying cultural values about morality, courage, and cunning. Unlike Muggle fairy tales, Beedle's stories assume a magical readership, making enchantment an everyday fact rather than a metaphor. Visual art appears most strikingly in magical portraits and tapestries. Unlike Muggle paintings, wizarding portraits move, speak, and interact with viewers. At Hogwarts, former headmasters and headmistresses advise their successors through their portraits, while the Fat Lady's portrait functions as a literal guardian of Gryffindor Tower. In this way, art becomes part of daily life, both decorative and functional. Tapestries, like the one depicting Barnabas the Barmy attempting to teach trolls ballet, show that humor and folly are also preserved in magical art, suggesting that creativity often reflects the eccentricities of the wizarding world. Music and performance hold equally important places. Celestina Warbeck, known as the Singing Sorceress, remains one of the most popular figures in wizarding entertainment. Her concerts enhanced with enchantments that immerse audiences. Bands like the Weird Sisters represent more modern wizarding music, blending magical spectacle with cultural identity. Their performance at the Yule Ball in 1994 showed how wizarding music carries the same energy as Muggle rock, but is enriched by interactive charms. Unlike Muggle concerts, wizarding performances often involve the audience directly, whether through floating lights, enchanted instruments, or charms that transform the atmosphere of the venue. Theatre and storytelling also appear in enchanted forms. Wizarding plays often include props and scenery that move of their own accord, and enchanted books sometimes resist being read or even attack careless handlers, as with the Monster Book of Monsters. These examples illustrate that in magical culture, literature and performance often cross into lived experience, creating a participatory art form. The contrast with Muggle culture is striking, where Muggles rely on technology such as film, television, and streaming. The wizarding world relies on enchantment to animate stories and art. Moving photographs, enchanted wireless programs, and talking portraits create a society where media is alive in a literal sense. This interactivity makes wizarding culture more immediate but also more limited, since mass distribution technologies like cinema or the internet have no direct magical equivalent. As a result, cultural exchange often happens face-to-face, through live events, enchanted objects, or shared texts. The importance of art and entertainment lies in their power to shape memory, identity, and belonging. A chocolate frog card of a famous witch or wizard carries history into every child's pocket. A portrait in a hallway preserves the voice of the past for future generations. A story from Beedle the Bard teaches lessons that endure long after the book is closed. These cultural forms remind wizards and witches that enchantment is not only for defense or labor, but also for imagination and joy. In this way, art, literature, and magical entertainment show that wizarding culture is not defined solely by law, secrecy, or resilience. It is also sustained by creativity, humor, and performance acts of expression that bind the community together and preserve its stories across generations. Magical portraits are one of the most distinctive art forms in the wizarding world, blending visual creativity with enchantment to produce works that live beyond their original creation. Unlike Muggle paintings, which capture a static likeness, wizarding portraits move, speak, and even carry fragments of the personality of their subjects. They are at once art, artifact, and participant in social and institutional life. At Hogwarts, portraits line the corridors, staircases, and common rooms, creating a visual archive of the school's history. Some, like the Fat Lady, serve practical functions by guarding entrances. Others, such as Sir Cadogan, provide comic relief, revealing how art can be both whimsical and protective. The most important portraits, however, reside in the headmaster's office, where former leaders of the school continue to advise their successors. These figures, though not fully alive, retain the voice, temperament, and wisdom of their subjects. When Dumbledore died in 1997, his portrait immediately appeared in the office, providing guidance to Professor McGonagall and later to Snape. This practice blurs the boundary between memory and governance, as the wisdom of the past remains an active resource for the present. Beyond Hogwarts, portraits serve other vital roles. Families often preserve the likenesses of ancestors in their homes. The Black family tapestry, while not a portrait in the traditional sense, functioned in a similar way by recording lineage and enforcing notions of blood purity. Portraits in the Ministry of Magic, such as those depicting former ministers, preserve institutional continuity and legitimacy, creating a visible link between present officials and their predecessors. The creation of such portraits involves both artistry and enchantment. Painters must capture likeness with skill, but it is enchantments that allow the image to move, speak, and interact. These enchantments do not create a perfect duplicate of the original person. Instead, the portrait embodies a partial consciousness, reflecting habits, opinions, and memories recorded during the subject's lifetime. This limitation explains why a portrait cannot innovate beyond what its subject knew, but can still provide valuable advice within that scope. The significance of portraits lies in how they collapse the distance between past and present. For students walking Hogwarts halls, the school is not only filled with living teachers, but also with painted figures who argue, gossip, and offer guidance. For leaders of institutions, portraits preserve continuity across generations. For families, they provide comfort and authority by keeping ancestors visibly present in daily life. When compared to Muggle art, wizarding portraits reveal a profound difference in how societies think about memory. A Muggle painting preserves a moment, while a wizarding portrait extends that presence into ongoing interaction. In this way, wizarding art blurs into governance, pedagogy, and domestic life, making it less an object of appreciation and more a tool of continuity. The lesson of magical portraits is that wizarding culture treats art as living memory. By animating images with fragments of personality, witches and wizards ensure that their stories, wisdom, and even their eccentricities endure. Portraits remind us that in the wizarding world, art is not only about looking back, but also about remaining present, shaping choices long after the brush has left the canvas. By now, we have traced the foundations of the wizarding world across law, education, culture, and daily life. Each topic stands on its own, yet together they reveal a society that is both intricate and fragile, sustained by rules, traditions, and the constant negotiation between freedom and responsibility. We began with the Statute of Secrecy and the structures of governance, which frame everything else. Magic, though powerful, cannot exist openly without inviting conflict with Muggles, and so laws are crafted to preserve secrecy, regulate spell use, and punish abuses. These laws shape how wizards move, communicate, and even how they raise children. The rules of magic are not technical alone. They are deeply social, From there, we examined the nature of magic itself, its innate qualities, its limits, and the disciplines that guide it. A wand focuses power, yet cannot erase the boundaries set by magical law, such as the impossibility of conjuring food or reversing death. Spellcasting depends on intent and control, reminding us that even the smallest action is shaped by both discipline and choice. In this way, governance, ethics, and practice are intertwined. The law says what must not be done, but magical fundamentals reveal what cannot be done, and ethics teaches us what should not be done. Education at Hogwarts then entered the picture, showing how students are trained to navigate these realities. OWL, S, and NEWTs act as gatekeepers for careers, while exposure to magical creatures and beings reveals the diplomatic and ethical dimensions of magic beyond the classroom. From the start, students must balance learning with responsibility, as their studies determine not only skill but also their place in society. Here we see education linked to law and to future economic structures, since credentials open doors to careers in governance, healing, and research. When we turned to infrastructure, travel, communication, and security, we saw how these systems carry both opportunity and risk. The flu network or apparition provide convenience, but can fail under wards or corruption. OWL Post binds daily life, but remains vulnerable to interception. Security is not static, but cyclical. As history shows, dark wizards and cursed objects emerge repeatedly, testing both institutions and individuals. Infrastructure, therefore, connects back to secrecy and law, since every form of travel and defense must remain hidden from muggles, while still strong enough to withstand magical threats. The economy and media reveal how these structures are sustained and how trust is built or broken. Gringotts and wizarding markets distribute resources. Yet goblin relations and wartime thefts remind us that economic systems are fragile. The Daily Prophet, the Quibbler, and the Wireless show that public opinion is not a neutral reflection of truth, but an active force that can uphold governments or fuel resistance. Here, governance, secrecy, and culture meet. What people believe often matters more than what is real. Finally, our exploration of sports, food, festivals, transportation, international schools, and art has shown how culture itself sustains resilience. Quidditch binds nations as much as Hogwarts feasts bind houses. The Hogwarts Express, moving portraits, and even chocolate frogs are not trivial details, but cultural anchors that remind witches and wizards of continuity, belonging, and shared identity. These traditions sustain morale when politics falter, when infrastructure fails, or when dark forces rise again. Taken together, the lesson is clear. None of these elements can be studied in isolation. Law shapes magic. Education prepares individuals for governance and careers. Infrastructure enables movement and defense. Economy and media determine stability. And culture preserves identity through joy and memory. The wizarding world endures because these systems, though strained, reinforce one another. Yet it also falters when one collapses, for secrecy without trust, or education without ethics, or culture without resilience, cannot hold against instability. Our review makes it clear that the wizarding world rests on interlocking systems: law, magic, infrastructure, economy, and culture. But it also reveals the gaps where those systems strain or collide. These tensions are not minor details. They are the pressure points where history bends and crises emerge. The first tension lies between law and practice. The statute of secrecy is absolute in principle, yet daily life constantly risks breaching it. A broomstick soaring too high, an owl going astray, or a quarrel that sparks a duel in public or threaten exposure. Ministry enforcement must race to contain mistakes. But the question remains: how sustainable is a law that demands secrecy in every detail when magic itself resists being hidden? Second, we see a strain between ethics and capability. Wizards can read minds, erase memories, and bind others with curses. The fact that they can does not mean that they should, yet temptation is ever present. Students at Hogwarts learn powerful spells long before they are mature enough to weigh their consequences. Here, education, law, and morality overlap, but they do not always align. What is taught, what is legal, and what is right can diverge in troubling ways. A third tension arises between infrastructure and instability. The Floo network, apparition, licenses, and Gringotts vaults create order, but they can all be corrupted or breached. History shows that dark forces repeatedly exploit these systems. Dementors deserting Azkaban, Death Eaters infiltrating the Ministry, or Gringotts defenses collapsing in 1998. If institutions are vulnerable to collapse, resilience must be built elsewhere, perhaps in individuals, in communities, or in cultural traditions that endure even when formal structures fail. Economics and media add further complexity. Trust emerges as the currency that underlies all other flows. Galleons have value because goblins safeguard them. Newspapers sway belief because witches and wizards accept them as truth, and schools grant credentials because society agrees to honor them. Yet, once trust is broken, when goblins rebel, when the prophet spreads lies, when examinations are corrupted, rebuilding it proves far harder than restoring bricks and mortar. Finally, culture itself reveals both strength and fragility. Hogwarts, feasts, Quidditch matches, wizarding weddings, and enchanted portraits bind the community together, but they also expose fault lines. Who is included in the feast, and who is excluded? Whose portrait hangs on the wall, and whose memory is erased? Traditions preserve belonging, but they also reveal boundaries of exclusion that must be questioned. These tensions point us toward the next stage of study. If secrecy, ethics, infrastructure, trust, and culture all strain under pressure, how do wizards and witches adapt? What role do healing, innovation, and international cooperation play in sustaining the world when cracks appear? And how do ordinary details, music, literature, household magic carry weight in times when laws and institutions cannot? The road ahead lies in these questions. By examining magical healthcare, innovation and research, and international relations, we can see how the wizarding world not only endures but evolves. Culture and creativity, no less than law and defense, will prove central to its survival. The health of the wizarding community depends on practices that blend medical knowledge, magical skill, and institutional care. Where muggles rely on hospitals, pharmaceuticals, and surgery, wizards turn to craft potions and enchanted remedies. Yet healing in the wizarding world is not limitless. It is shaped by tradition, regulation, and the same boundaries that govern magic itself. At the center of wizarding medicine in Britain stands St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, located in London. Hidden within a repurposed department store, St. Mungo's treats every variety of magical affliction, from spell damage to potion accidents to injuries caused by magical creatures. Its healers, identified by their lime green robes, undergo rigorous training that requires mastery of advanced charms, transfiguration, potions, and herbology. Admission to the profession is highly competitive, requiring top marks in subjects such as potions, herbology, and defense against the dark arts at NEWT level. The hospital is organized into specialized wards, each reflecting the dangers unique to magical life. One treats creature bites and stings, another focuses on spell damage, and still another deals with potion and plant poisoning. A permanent ward houses patients suffering from long-term conditions, such as those left mentally impaired by repeated exposure to dark magic. This division of care reveals that while some magical injuries can be cured with remarkable speed, others remain stubbornly beyond the reach of even the most skilled healers. The cases of Frank and Alice Longbottom, tortured into permanent incapacity by the Cruciatus curse, show the limits of magical healing when dark curses leave lasting scars. Daily medical practice also extends beyond St. Mungo's. Hogwarts itself provides basic care under the supervision of Madame Pomfrey, who treats everything from broken bones to Quidditch injuries. Simple remedies such as Skillgrow for regrowing bones or Pepper Up potion for colds demonstrate how common potions replace Muggle pharmaceuticals. Minor injuries may be healed on the spot with spells such as Episkey, while more serious cases are stabilized until transfer to St. Mungo's is possible. This system resembles triage in Muggle medicine, where local care manages immediate needs before patients are referred to larger institutions. The difference between Muggle and Wizarding healthcare lies partly in the speed of treatment. Wounds that might take months to heal in the Muggle world can be closed in moments with the right spell. Broken bones can be mended with a wave of a wand, though side effects may be uncomfortable, as Harry Potter experienced when Skillgrow painfully regrew his arm bones overnight. At the same time, some conditions, such as lycanthropy, resist cure altogether. Wolfsbane potion can mitigate the effects of transformation for werewolves but cannot eliminate the condition. Here, magical medicine encounters the same boundaries as Muggle medicine. Some illnesses cannot be fully cured, only managed. Healthcare also reflects broader cultural and ethical questions. The use of house elves in hospital kitchens, for example, raises questions about labor and dependency in maintaining patient care. Similarly, access to treatment highlights social inequality. Wealthier families can afford rare ingredients or private remedies, while poorer witches and wizards depend on communal institutions. These disparities echo the broader economic tensions of Wizarding society, where access to education, employment, and healthcare often align with social status. The importance of magical healing lies not only in survival, but in resilience. During times of conflict, such as both Wizarding wars, St. Mungo's became a site of both physical recovery and social continuity. Its survival ensured that wounded witches and wizards could return to their communities, preserving morale in times of instability. At the same time, its limits reminded all that magic, though powerful, does not erase suffering or loss. In this way, magical healthcare stands as a pillar of Wizarding society. It reflects the strengths of enchantment, the limits of magical law, and the social questions that arise when healing is both miraculous and incomplete. To understand Wizarding life fully, one must see that healing is not only about mending bodies, but about sustaining communities and preserving hope. In December 1995, Arthur Weasley was attacked by Voldemort's serpent, Nagini, while stationed at the Department of Mysteries. The incident provides one of the clearest windows into the workings of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, revealing both its strengths and limitations as the central medical institution of Wizarding Britain. The attack itself was unusual. Nagini's venom, magically enhanced through her status as a Horcrux, inflicted wounds that resisted ordinary treatment. Arthur was discovered in time thanks to Harry Potter's vision, which linked his mind to Voldemort's through the scar connection. Immediate intervention saved Arthur's life, but long-term care was required, and he was transferred to St. Mungo's for healing. This case already shows how magical healthcare often intersects with broader struggles in the wizarding world, as political conflicts generate medical crises. At St. Mungo's, Arthur received treatment in a specialized ward for creature-induced injuries. Healers worked to cleanse the venom, applying both spell work and potions. Despite their efforts, his wounds proved resistant, reopening repeatedly until healers devised a combination of charms and rare medicinal substances that gradually stabilized him. The case demonstrated both the resourcefulness of magical medicine and its limits when confronted with injuries tied to dark magic. Unlike a broken bone or a simple cut, which can be healed in moments, wounds inflicted by cursed creatures may defy even the best trained healers. During the Weasley family's visits, we glimpsed the structure and atmosphere of the hospital. Patients with minor spell mishaps shared space with those suffering long-term conditions, such as Gilderoy Lockhart, who remained permanently damaged after his own backfired memory charm. In another ward, the Longbottoms were permanent residents, their minds destroyed by the Cruciatus curse. These examples highlight how St. Mungo's is both a place of miraculous recovery and a reminder of the boundaries that magical medicine cannot cross. The hospital also functioned as a social hub, where families encountered not only their loved ones, but also the broader wizarding community. Encounters in its wards revealed the everyday reality of magical life. Misapplied charms, experimental accidents, and the tragic consequences of dark curses. Unlike Hogwarts Infirmary, which served as a place of temporary care, St. Mungo's housed the full spectrum of magical suffering, from the comic to the catastrophic. Arthur Weasley's eventual recovery was a triumph for the healers, but it also underscored the fragility of even the most advanced magical healthcare. Without immediate intervention, he would have died, and even with treatment, his recovery was prolonged and uncertain. The case showed that while magical medicine can achieve remarkable results, it is not invincible. Some injuries resist cure, others require constant management, and still others, like those of the Longbottoms, remain beyond hope. The broader lesson of this episode is that healthcare in the wizarding world is inseparable from politics and community life. St. Mungo's did not only heal Arthur, it also became a site where the costs of conflict were made visible, where families confronted the consequences of dark magic, and where the limits of enchantment were laid bare. In this sense, the hospital is not only a medical institution, but a mirror of wizarding society itself, showing both its resilience and its vulnerability. Innovation has always been central to the development of the wizarding world. New spells, potions, and magical devices expand the possibilities of daily life, while also shaping politics, culture, and conflict. Yet, invention in magic is not without risk. Each breakthrough carries ethical dilemmas, unintended consequences, and the potential for misuse. To study magical research is to study both progress and peril. Spell invention is one of the oldest forms of magical innovation. Wizards and witches have long experimented with incantations, wand movements, and intent to create new effects. Severus Snape's creation of spells such as Sectum Sempra demonstrates both the power and the danger of this practice, though his notes in the Half-Blood Prince's textbook improved many charms and potions. The darker spells he devised caused serious harm when used recklessly. This example highlights how spellcraft advances through experimentation, but also why educational institutions treat it with caution. The Ministry regulates certain spells under the ban on unforgivable curses, but many others circulate informally, making innovation both a source of knowledge and a risk to public safety. Potion development is equally central to magical research. Potions require rare ingredients, precise brewing methods, and extensive testing. Advances in this field have shaped both everyday life and specialized medicine. Wolfsbane potion, invented in the late 20th century, allowed werewolves to retain their minds during transformation, changing the way society viewed lycanthropy. At the same time, potions can be dangerous, as shown by Polyjuice potion, which requires rare and hazardous components, and is strictly regulated due to its potential for identity theft and espionage. Here again, innovation brings both opportunity and peril. Magazoology and herbology also serve as domains of innovation. Newt Scamander's research into magical creatures expanded understanding of global biodiversity, leading to improved regulation and conservation. Discoveries in magical plants, such as the use of mandrakes to restore petrified victims during the Chamber of Secrets crisis, reveal how herbology advances can directly impact public safety. These fields remind us that research is not confined to spellbooks or laboratories, but extends into forests, swamps, and dragon reserves. The Department of Mysteries represents the most secretive form of magical research. Unspeakables study time, death, space, thought, and love, though little is known about their findings. The presence of the veil in the death chamber and the existence of time-turners, later destroyed by the Ministry, show that the boundaries of magical research often touch on the most dangerous aspects of existence. This secrecy reflects both the potential of such studies and the catastrophic risks if knowledge were misused. Innovation also raises ethical dilemmas. Research may produce tools of healing, as with Wolfsbane potion, or weapons of destruction, as with cursed objects. The creation of Horcruxes, though rare and Forbiddens represents the darkest example of magical experimentation, splitting the soul in pursuit of immortality. Though few would dare such practices, their existence reveals that magical knowledge can be corrupted by ambition. Even less extreme cases, such as Fred and George Weasley's development of joke products, challenge the boundary between playful invention and public risk. Their skiving snack boxes, while humorous, had serious effects on students' health and forced Hogwarts staff to regulate their use. The importance of magical innovation lies in its ability to transform society. Breakthroughs in medicine, defense, and communication can reshape everyday life. Yet research also carries consequences that ripple through law, ethics, and culture. A new spell or potion may solve one problem while creating another, forcing communities to decide not only what can be done, but what should be done. In this way, magical innovation reflects the broader truths of wizarding life. Progress requires experimentation, yet experimentation requires restraint. Knowledge can heal or harm depending on how it is applied. To understand the wizarding world fully, one must see that research is not simply the pursuit of discovery, but the careful negotiation between creativity, danger, and responsibility. The wizarding world is not confined to Britain. It is part of a global network of magical communities that must balance secrecy, diplomacy, and cultural diversity. International relations among wizards reveal both cooperation and conflict, as magical governments seek to uphold the statute of secrecy, regulate trade, and respond to crises that cross borders. The primary institution overseeing global wizarding cooperation is the International Confederation of Wizards, ICW, comparable to the United Nations in the Muggle world. The ICW establishes international law, including the 1692 Statute of Secrecy, which all member nations are bound to uphold. The Confederation also arbitrates disputes, coordinates enforcement across borders, and manages international events such as the Triwizard Tournament or the Quidditch World Cup. The Supreme Mugwump, the Confederation's leader, is an influential figure, with Albus Dumbledore once holding the position during the 20th century. International diplomacy is often tested by cultural differences. European schools such as Boxbatons and Durmstrang emphasize elegance or discipline, while Ilvermorny and Castello Bruxo reflect different traditions entirely. These contrasts are mirrored in governance, where laws regarding creatures, wand use, and magical practices vary by country. For example, flying carpets remain legal in parts of Asia but are banned in Britain. Such differences require negotiation and compromise, particularly when international travel or trade is involved. The Quidditch World Cup illustrates both cooperation and vulnerability. Nations work together to host and regulate the event, requiring immense coordination to manage secrecy and security. Yet the 1994 World Cup was disrupted by Death Eater violence, showing how instability in one region can ripple globally. Similarly, the Triwizard Tournament of 1994, intended to promote friendship, ended in tragedy with the death of Cedric Diggory and the return of Voldemort, proving that even carefully managed international projects can be destabilized by internal threats. Economic exchange also drives international relations. Trade in potion ingredients, magical creatures, and enchanted objects requires regulation to prevent misuse. The export of dragon eggs, for example, is strictly controlled, while international cooperation is essential to prevent the illegal trafficking of dangerous creatures or cursed artifacts. Here again, global institutions echo Muggle concerns, showing that regulation is as much about safety as it is about economic stability. At the same time, secrecy complicates diplomacy. Each nation must maintain its hidden magical community while coexisting with its Muggle counterpart. This dual responsibility requires careful coordination, since breaches of secrecy in one country can have repercussions worldwide. The Confederation exists not only to preserve peace among wizards, but to prevent exposure to Muggles on a global scale. The importance of international cooperation lies in its fragility. Magical communities are small, insular, and diverse, yet they are bound together by the shared need for secrecy and survival. Institutions such as the ICW provide structure, but their authority depends on trust and compliance. When nations refuse to cooperate, or when dark forces exploit divisions, the global wizarding community is left vulnerable. In this way, international relations reveal that the wizarding world is not isolated but interconnected. Just as wizards depend on laws, schools, and culture within their own nations, they also depend on fragile alliances and shared commitments across borders. To understand magical society fully, one must see that its future depends not only on local resilience, but on international cooperation. The wizarding world is not a collection of isolated practices, but an intricate system where law, education, infrastructure, economy, and culture sustain one another. To study any one part in isolation is to miss the way each strand depends on the others. Together, these elements create a fabric that is both resilient and fragile, capable of enduring centuries yet vulnerable to collapse when one thread frays. The foundation lies in law and secrecy. The Statute of Secrecy demands that all movement, education, and innovation be contained within hidden boundaries. This legal framework dictates how children enter magical schools, how families travel, how news circulates, and how institutions defend themselves. Without secrecy, culture cannot flourish, and without law, secrecy cannot be enforced. Education then builds upon this foundation. Hogwarts and its counterparts abroad train young witches and wizards, not only in spell work, but also in social roles. Examinations determine careers, while encounters with magical beings teach diplomacy and ethics. In turn, education feeds into governance, producing auras, healers, researchers, and ministry officials who sustain the system. A Hogwarts feast or Quidditch match may appear to be leisure, but they are also institutions of identity formation, binding individuals into the traditions that law requires. Infrastructure supports these traditions with movement and communication. The Floo Network, Owl Post, Apparition, and the Hogwarts Express create the pathways along which knowledge, resources, and culture flow. Yet these systems are vulnerable. A ward can block travel, a Death Eater can infiltrate the Floo network. And even a simple broomstick flight risks exposure to muggles here. Secrecy once again intersects with infrastructure, showing that no system functions alone. Economy and media carry these flows further. Gringotts and wizarding markets regulate the exchange of goods, while newspapers and wireless broadcasts regulate the exchange of information. Trust, more than gold or parchment, becomes the true currency. When the Daily Prophet aligned itself with political denial, the entire society was left blind to Voldemort's return. When Gringotts was breached in 1998, the illusion of invulnerability collapsed. These examples show that institutions endure only so long as people believe in their stability. Culture then sustains what law and infrastructure alone cannot. Sports, festivals, food, and art preserve identity in times of instability. Quidditch unites families and nations. Hogwarts feasts anchor students in belonging. Portraits preserve memory across generations. And wizarding literature shapes moral imagination. These practices remind wizards and witches why secrecy and resilience matter, providing reasons to endure when dark forces rise. At the same time, healthcare and innovation reveal the limits of even the strongest systems. St. Mungo's can heal wounds but not cure. The Cruciatus Curse. Research can produce Wolfsbane potion to manage lycanthropy, but not eliminate it. Magical progress solves some problems while creating others. And ethics must constantly intervene to remind society that ability does not equal permission. Taken together, these elements reveal a simple but profound truth. The wizarding world is not held together by magic alone. It is held together by the interplay of secrecy, law, education, infrastructure, economy, media, culture, healthcare, and ethics. Each sustains the others, and each is tested when instability arises. The wars against Voldemort were not only battles of spells, but also battles of law, truth, trust, resilience, and belonging. The grand lesson is that survival depends on interconnection. A society can endure dark wizards, economic strain, or media corruption so long as culture and community provide resilience. Yet, when too many threads unravel at once, collapse becomes possible. To study the wizarding world is to see how each piece fits into the larger pattern, and to recognize that the strength of the whole depends on the care of its parts. Looking back across law, education, infrastructure, economy, culture, and healthcare, what emerges is not a list of separate domains, but a society defined by their interdependence. Each topic we studied is a thread in a larger fabric, and it is only when they are seen together that the wizarding world comes into focus. The statute of secrecy sits at the center, demanding concealment from muggles and shaping every decision. From how a child travels to school to how an international sporting event is managed. Without this law, the entire system would collapse, since the wizarding world relies on invisibility for survival. Yet secrecy cannot hold on its own. It must be reinforced by governance, education, infrastructure, and culture. Governance and law set the rules, but it is education that prepares individuals to follow and uphold them. Hogwarts examinations decide who will heal the sick, who will defend the law, and who will research the future. At the same time, the school shapes identity through houses, feasts, and shared journeys on the Hogwarts Express. What begins as learning spells becomes learning society itself. Infrastructure then sustains this society. Travel by broom, train, or Floo network connects families, schools, and governments, while owl posts and magical portraits transmit messages and memory. These systems make daily life possible, but they also reveal fragility. A ward can block apparition, an intercepted owl can compromise secrets, and a single act of sabotage can ripple through the entire community. The economy and media add another layer, showing that trust is as essential as spellcraft. Gringotts symbolizes stability until it is breached, and the Daily Prophet symbolizes truth until it spreads propaganda. These examples remind us that belief sustains institutions as much as magic does. Once trust is lost, no enchantment can easily restore it. Against these strains, culture and tradition provide resilience. Quidditch, festivals, music, and enchanted portraits remind wizards why secrecy and survival matter. Food and celebration bind communities together, even in times of instability. These traditions are not trivial diversions, but anchors of belonging, carrying memory and identity across generations. Even healthcare and research reinforce this lesson. St. Mungo's can mend bones or cure poisons, but it cannot reverse death or undo the Cruciatus curse. Innovation can bring breakthroughs such as Wolfsbane potion, yet it also tempts misuse, as with Snape's spells or cursed objects. Here, ethics is essential, reminding society that magic's limits are not only technical but moral. When woven together, these strands show that the wizarding world is held up by balance. Law without culture is hollow. Infrastructure without trust collapses. Education without ethics creates danger. Culture without law loses direction. No part stands alone. The wars against Voldemort tested this balance. They were not simply battles of wands, but battles over secrecy, law, trust, education, and identity. When media spread lies, when governance faltered, when Gringotts was breached, it was culture and community that sustained hope. The feasts at Hogwarts, the loyalty of families like the Weasleys, and the resilience of ordinary witches and wizards provided the strength that institutions alone could not. The lesson of this study is that the wizarding world endures not because magic is limitless, but because its people maintain the delicate interplay of law, infrastructure, culture, and ethics. Each thread strengthens the others. Each weakness can unravel the whole. To understand magic is not only to study spells, but to understand the society that sustains them. To study the wizarding world is to see that magic is never just a matter of spell and wand. It is a living system shaped by secrecy, bound by law, nurtured by education, sustained by infrastructure, driven by economy, voiced through media, and carried forward in culture. Each part strengthens the other, and each part depends on the others to endure. The statute of secrecy remains the keystone, shaping every choice from how a student boards a train to how nations compete at the Quidditch World Cup. Secrecy is not only a legal command, but the condition that allows wizarding society to exist at all. From this foundation grows governance and law, which regulate spell use, enforce restrictions on curses, and create order out of potential chaos. Without this structure, secrecy would falter, and with it, the very possibility of magical life. Education then takes up the task of preparing young witches and wizards for this order. At Hogwarts and schools across the globe, students learn not only incantations and wand work, but also how to take their place in society. Examinations channel them into careers, while houses, feasts, and journeys on the Hogwarts Express shape their identity and belonging. A school is more than a place of lessons. It is the crucible where ethics, tradition, and ambition meet. Infrastructure sustains these patterns of life, linking home, school, and government. The Floo network, apparition, owlpost, and enchanted vehicles make movement and communication possible, but also reveal how fragile these systems are. A ward may block apparition. A misdirected owl may expose secrets. A hijacked portkey may carry disaster instead of convenience. The systems that support daily life are both essential and vulnerable, reflecting the larger truth that no enchantment is beyond failure. The economy and media extend this web still further. Gringotts provides financial stability, yet when trust in the goblins wavers, so too does confidence in the system. Newspapers and wireless broadcasts shape perception. Yet, when the Daily Prophet denied Voldemort's return, the entire society drifted into complacency. The lesson here is that truth and trust are as necessary to wizarding survival as spellwork or secrecy. Culture and tradition provide the deepest form of resilience. Quidditch brings nations together. Hogwarts feasts remind students that they are part of something larger. Chocolate frog cards preserve history in children's pockets, and portraits keep the voices of the past alive in present halls. Festivals and songs remind wizards that even in dark times, there is joy worth protecting. These traditions are not ornament but anchor. They keep the community alive when politics falter and when war threatens to tear institutions apart. Healthcare and research show that even the most advanced enchantments encounter limits. St. Mungo's can mend bones, purge poisons, and treat spell damage. Yet the Cruciatus curse leaves scars that never fade, and lycanthropy remains incurable. Research can produce breakthroughs, such as Wolfsbane potion, but also tempt abuses like Horcruxes or cursed artifacts. Here, ethics takes its place alongside law, reminding society that what can be done is not always what should be done. All of these strands are tested in times of conflict. The Wizarding Wars showed that spells alone do not win battles. Societies endure through the balance of secrecy, education, trust, culture, and resilience. When the Ministry faltered, the Order of the Phoenix drew strength from community. When the Daily Prophet spread lies, truth was whispered in the pages of the Quibbler. When Gringotts was breached, Hogwarts stood as a last refuge. Victory did not come from a single institution or spell, but from the weaving together of every thread that kept society alive. The final lesson, then, is that magic is not limitless, and it is not separate from responsibility. It is bound by laws of nature, by ethics of consent, by institutions of trust, and by traditions of memory. To wield magic is to accept the duty of secrecy, the discipline of education, the caution of infrastructure, the fairness of economy, the honesty of media, the creativity of culture, and the compassion of healing. Each piece strengthens the others, and each weakness can unravel the whole. The wizarding world endures because its people honor this balance. They celebrate at feasts, defend in wars, govern through law, heal the sick, teach the young, and tell the stories that carry meaning forward. Magic itself may be power, but power without care collapses. What sustains society is the choice to weave that power into trust, community, and tradition. In the end, to understand the wizarding world is to see that it is not magic alone that keeps it alive, but the careful balance of law, culture, and responsibility. Survival rests not in the strength of spells, but in the strength of people who use them wisely. That is the final lesson, and the one that will always matter most. And so, our journey through the wizarding world draws to a close. We have wandered through the great halls of Hogwarts, studied its classrooms, and followed the paths of lore, education, culture, and tradition that shape the magical community. Along the way, we saw that magic is not limitless power, but a delicate balance, held together by secrecy, responsibility, and trust. We traced how spells and potions serve daily life, how schools prepare the next generation, how institutions protect or falter, and how culture carries memory across time. We have seen that it is not any one of these that keeps the wizarding world alive, but the way they interweave into a living whole. As this story settles into stillness, imagine the castle at night. Candles flicker low, portraits murmur softly to one another, and the enchanted ceiling fades into the quiet of a starry sky. The Hogwarts Express rests on its track, waiting for the dawn of a new journey, while the Owl Post and the Floo Network lie silent until morning. The wizarding world breathes in rhythm with its people, a community that endures because of its care, its resilience, and its traditions. Now, allow yourself to rest with these images in mind. Picture walking the corridors as they quiet into sleep, each step carrying you further into calm. Imagine sitting by the common room fire as the flames burn low, the warmth wrapping around you like a soft blanket. Let the lessons and stories of this world drift into your dreams, where they can weave with your own imagination. Before you close your eyes fully, I want to thank you sincerely for spending this time with me tonight. If you found comfort, fascination, or peace in this story, I invite you to stay connected with the channel. Please take a gentle moment to subscribe, so you can return for the next journey into magical worlds. A simple like helps more than you might think, sending a small ripple of support that allows these stories to reach others who may need them. And if you wish to discover more, I encourage you to explore my channel. There you will find other tales, reflections, and journeys into both the wizarding world and beyond. Each story is designed to guide you into rest, while exploring worlds of wonder, memory, and meaning. Whether you are here for the comfort of sleep or the richness of lore, you will always find a place waiting for you. So, as you drift now into a deeper calm, know that you are part of a circle of listeners who have shared this journey with you. Together we have walked through laws and traditions, feasts and festivals, portraits and potions, triumphs and trials. And now, together, we allow the story to settle into silence, leaving only peace behind. Thank you again for listening, for supporting, and for dreaming with me tonight. May your rest be deep, your dreams be gentle, and may you wake tomorrow with the quiet wonder of a world that is always ready to welcome you back.